Welcome back to the hi-rez production studios, everybody, as it's time to get ready now for the SWC games kicking off in earnest. We've got Belt Slap up against Renegades starting us off here this week. Aggro joined by Mifflin here on the desk. And look, Miff, this set going to be unbelievable. We can't wait to share it with you, and we can't wait to see how you're watching the SWC at home. The best way that you can show us how you're watching is to go on Twitter and tweet using the hashtag SWC at home. If you do that, you got a chance to be featured here live on the broadcast, just like Davey's screen is doing right now. Been watching SMITE since Season 1, grew up watching the game, love to participate watching and getting into SMITE. Thanks for the support as always, Davey. Hopefully soon enough we can get back to having all the fans around us as we get prepared for the SMITE World Championship. But good to know everyone's watching at home. Miff, Belt Slap versus Renegades, an incredible way to kick off this SWC week. This SCC team in Belt Slap that everyone has been talking about up against the Renegades, who no one knows exactly what to expect from this squad. What are some of the things you're going to be looking for in this match?
I'm looking for the pace, really, because Belt Slap is a team that has been historically very slow. They like to play around that 30, 35-minute mark before they really start to make plays as a team. And I'm not sure that they're going to be able to bring that exact same style to the SPL here. In the SPL, in North America in particular, we've been seeing a very high focus on pressure in the early game, kind of pioneered by Ghost, a very dominant team. And I don't think Belt Slap is going to find the opportunity to wait it out till that late game. I think they're going to really need to find some early pressure somewhere on the map.
I completely agree with you. I think that's the main point to focus on here, is that Renegades has also been a team. You mentioned Ghost as the premier early game team. I think Renegades is maybe second on that list on who wants to punish you early game. And it's going to be difficult for Belt Slap to keep up with that potentially, especially with the news that Trix Tank is out for Belt Slap and Genetics is going to be filling in. Obviously, a very talented player in his own right. In fact, we've got Genetics joining us now for a quick pregame interview all the way from Europe. Sam, can you hear us? How you doing, man? Are you feeling good in your lead up here against Renegades?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, we're feeling good. We've been practicing on North America now for the last 3 weeks, so we're pretty used to it by now.
Good. I wanted to ask you, how has it been trying to get some synergy with this squad in a short amount of time? How do you think you've meshed with this Belt Slap squad?
We definitely had differences at the start, and I think it's really weird playing with a team that's beaten you all year to joining them and seeing how they do it. But I've learned some things, and I think we've kind of come to a middle ground in terms of shot calling and how we're going to play the map.
And Genetics, do you think there's going to be a lot of overlap between your and Jake's God pool? Are you worried about prioritizing anything in particular?
I can't really say anything. Jake's got a massive God pool and he plays a lot of weird stuff. So I'm sure there's some things that he plays that I can't play. But there are definitely some stable picks that I'm sure we both play and will play in this set.
Excited to see you get at it, man. Good luck and hoping for a great run here for you and the squad here this week. Can't wait to watch the game.
Thank you.
Genetics there, the support for Belt Slap this week, and I think that he's right to point out Jake's large God pool here, Miff, because Jake has shown the ability to play anything from Fafnir, where they pick that high up, Sobek, as Gore mentioned, that's their #1 overall pick throughout the year, and then things like Tyr that you can see coming out of him in the support role.
Tyr, Nox, Neat, this guy is so unorthodox. If you told me at the beginning of the year that the guy who was running it down as Neat support in my ranked games was going to be a huge premier player in the SPL, I wouldn't have believed you. It's absolutely insane to think about, but that's exactly what Jake is. He is a high-octane playmaker, and he really does carry the Renegades to a ton of their wins. I'm going to keep my eyes on this guy.
It's going to be a lot of fun to watch, especially when the rest of the Renegades have been able to really learn to play around Jake very effectively. I think a big part of that is who's joining us for our next interview. Venenu in the mid lane there for Renegades. Ven, you got us? How you feeling going into your set up against Belt Slap?
Feeling good. We did a lot of research on them. We didn't want to underestimate them at all. They're a good team. They won every single game this whole year. So going into it with whatever knowledge we could get.
Ven, you're no stranger to playing at the SMITE World Championship. You're a world champion, a Season 4 World Finals MVP. How does this year's prep and lead up compare to years past? How are you feeling going in this year in comparison to how you have in the last few years?
I actually think that our prep is probably the best going into this Worlds than it has been probably in any other Worlds. We've just been doing a lot of research. We've been trying a bunch of different things, just getting everything out there, learning what we can, and yeah, let's see if we can show it off.
And Ven, we've got a little in-joke amongst the casters. We call you Ven of the Sharingan, Ven of the stolen technique. In games 2 and 3 of any given set, you almost always prioritize the enemy mid laner's best picks. Is that something that the Renegades have been really focusing on? Is that something that you think is one of your strengths? How do you feel about that?
I think we kind of just go on a game by game and see like how we want to play our certain draft or whatever gives us the best potential for our draft. We kind of go into it that way. And yeah, maybe there's be some spicy stuff. Who knows? Maybe some fun.
I'm expecting something spicy from the Renegades, as always. Good luck today, Ven. Can't wait to watch the set.
Have a good one.
You too, buddy. Hopefully we're going to see some of that spicy stuff from the Renegades, because this is a team that has that type of potential. We already talked about Jake, but it really doesn't end there. We've seen Ven take things like Set into the mid lane. We've seen Bera play Scotty when no one else is. Feel like this is a team that could end up surprising some people with their picks and pans.
Very unorthodox, right? And I think the Renegades is a team that has been kind of constantly evolving throughout the year. Ratatasker recently has been a priority pick for Lazara. He didn't really touch that in Phase 1 or even the beginning of Phase 2. And as you already highlighted, Barracuda kind of being the only Jingwei player nowadays, really prioritizing that pick as well as highlighting the Scotty. I think that the Renegades are going to have a huge advantage in their sets just because of matchup knowledge. Not many people are playing their picks.
Myth, as someone who has done a lot of prep for Worlds in the past, has competed at this sort of level, do you think that if you were in these players' shoes, you'd be feeling a little bit nervous? Things are different this year. There isn't the crowd. You aren't playing up on stage. Do you think that would make you feel more at home, or do you think that would maybe mess with you a little bit?
That's an interesting question, because I think as far as LANs go, there's two types of players. There's people who really feed off the energy of the crowd. I'm thinking of the PBMs of the world, the Zapmans, the Barracudas, who are so used to being that front-facing figure in the community. And then there are the more quiet players, the Mazwals, the Sinos, the guys who don't have these huge bombastic personalities. I think those guys might feel a little bit more comfortable from the safety of their homes and just being comfortable in their own setups. Some people might be a little bit better on LAN. I know me personally, I much prefer having the crowd, having that roaring energy around you. It's just a great energy to have.
That does not surprise me at all. I imagine you'd much rather be yelling at your opponent over the line than just yelling to your teammates, just adding that little bit of an extra edge for you there. As we get into picks and bans here pretty shortly, I think a big thing that a lot of the community is talking about is how much healers were prioritized during the SWC wildcards qualifying these SEC and SOC teams. Do you think that was more SCC, SOC meta, or do you think that we'll see healers continue to rise here this week?
I think that healers should likely be in the meta. Aphrodite, incredibly strong right now. Even Hell, getting a ton of value. But as far as the SPL goes, they haven't been prioritizing healers to the same extent as the SEC/SOC. But with recent itemization changes, with the way the meta is playing out, and me expecting that Worlds games should go a little bit longer, I think we might see some healer bans rolling through.
I mean, Ra was one of the most heavily prioritized gods towards the back end of phase number 2. Would not surprise me to see him be at the top, but I'm worried about these Chang'e mids that we're seeing all the time in ranked and things like that. I mean, can that really be a top-tier strategy when it comes to SPL-level gameplay?
When you have Chang'e in the mid lane, she is one of the most fight-centric picks that you can have. You want to be in that constant 3v3 engagement, and I think it could certainly work out because she's got that constant damage output, a stun from a range, but I'm kind of along the same line of thought as you. I do not think that Chang'e really should be that priority mage healer when you have gods like Ra, like Aphrodite available. Chang'e should be that one you fall down to next, but I think it certainly can work out. SSG seems to like it.
They sure do. A lot of teams are liking that pick these days. And I do think that when you kind of take that blink Chang'e, just blink ult the back line, can be pretty devastating, but certainly a high risk, high reward sort of play style. If healers are going to be near the top, I think that we're going to see it here in this set because Europe in particular has always liked those healers. Can't wait to get it started. Picks and bans now right around the corner for Belt Slap and Renegades. These two teams kicking off our SWC week. Let's get into it. Picks and bans ready to go for the very first game of the Season 7 SMITE World Championship. Belt Slap in that first pick position. You feel like when you're looking at Belt Slap, I'm going to be looking at what Genetics is going to pick because I think that matching the pressure from Jake is going to be key. Belt Slap clearly agree, Ymir being their very first ban. But can Johnny get one of those hyper carries he's so well known for and actually hyper carry against some of the best?
It's exciting to see. I agree with you that Genetics should be prioritized for Belt Slap just because he's newer to the roster coming in as a sub. You want to make sure that he's as comfortable as possible. But Johnny's God pool is so niche, right? Are you going to see the Bakasura? Are we going to see the Arachnes, the Kalis, the Erlang Shens, all these auto attack centric gods, even the Ao Kuang? I'm not sure, but I think that Johnny is certainly a player we need to keep our eyes on because he is the focal point of this Belt Slap roster. They love playing through this kid.
Belt Slap certainly ready to go. You're getting cycled through a couple of their players. Renegades players likely coming next. As we were talking about healers, how about 5 healer bands? Oof. Hell, Ra, Chang'e, Yamoja, and Guan Yu, the bands. And then, of course, the Ymir for Awesome Jake. And that leaves open Set. Set, a god that was talked about a lot towards the back end of the year. Felt like teams are finally starting to get on board the train that Set might not be just a ranked stomp pick, but legitimately very good. Do you think Set is still #1 overall potential value?
I think so for sure, just because he brings you fantastic flex potential. That Set can go into mid, and it can go into the jungle, so it should keep the Renegades guessing on the roster of Belt Slap for the next coming picks. I think it brings a ton of pressure, the ability to find pressure in the early game and exploit the enemy mid laner if it does go into mid. You've got some of the most kill potential possible out of this pick.
Aphrodite, the one big healer that wasn't banned, locked in here for Belt Slap. And already you've got a great pocket set up with that Set likely in the jungle at this point, if that is an Aphrodite in the mid lane. Though we have seen Set solo be quite successful, as Tier does come through for the Renegades, both Variety and Jake. Very, very clean on this pick. I think it's no surprise to me that these picks and bans are moving quickly, because you're always prepped for game 1 of a set. There isn't any sort of history to go off of besides your prep. But Apollo Ratatosker is a top 2. I feel like that's signaling to me that Renegades are going to be looking to play aggressive early just based on those 2 picks alone.
It's just so much global pressure. If you take a fight on the enemy speed buff, Apollo's going to be there with your Ratatosker. If you take a fight on the red buff, it's Sky Police tactics, right? You want to be all over the place. And this tier pick in particular is something I want to highlight, because not only is it fit into Renegades' picks, but it also strips away one of Belt Slap's signatures. Julio is now not going to have that pick for himself. He's going to have to fall down that tier list at least once tier.
Well, now a couple bans at Julio's direction with the Hercules and the Sun Wukong. Morgan taken off the board by Belt Slap, looking more towards Venenu's sort of style, what he likes to go to in the mid lane. Persephone is still open, but it won't be banned. It's going to be the Sobek instead. So Belt Slap kind of getting some insurance that isn't going to be tier support, and make sure that Jake doesn't get one of his priority picks. But I think that he's still got a couple gods in the god pool left over after this. Renegades with a top pick coming out of these picks and bans, and I think that with how flexible their draft is, I mean, Ratatosker, jungler, can solo as well, tier, support, solo laner, now Achilles, same sort of deal. This looks to me like tier support based on this Achilles. I feel like if you're picking the Achilles, that's going to Variety.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. But this is such a physical stacked comp, isn't it? 4 Fizz coming through from the Renegades here. And last time the Renegades picked up this Ratatasker, they matched it with a Morgan out of mid so they can have that constant pressure. I'm worried if that's the strategy for Renegades going forward from here, that they're going to be lacking that traditional AoE magic damage that something like a Poseidon could bring, or a Ra, or something along those lines. I'll be very interested to see Ven's pick.
Definitely going to need some heavy magic damage coming out of Ven at this rate, as Discordia being hovered does throw a wrench in what I thought Belt Slap was doing. Aphrodite, I thought, was heading towards the mid lane. Now with Discordia and Nike, it's either going to be Afro solo, Nike support, or more likely, I think, based on what Genetics has done in the past, this looks to me like Aphrodite support and Nike solo, leaving your dual lane as Rom Afro in the early game. I don't know. I mean, healer is very good here, Mifflin, but if Renegade's whole strategy is to run you down in the early game, Aphrodite support feels like one of the weakest picks you could put in that role.
Especially up against the king of the level 2 gank, Lazaro, right? If this Aphrodite goes into the long lane, it's a huge target on their back. And Belt Slap's draft is interesting, right? This Aphrodite doesn't necessarily have to go into support. We could even see potentially an Aphrodite set lane with Rom in mid, something along those lines. And I think that potentially could work out slightly better. You want that additional pressure from the set. You get the back off pressure from Aphrodite on that link. It might be something to keep your eyes on.
Maybe. I just can't imagine you're taking Set out of Johnny's hands. I mean, if that's the dude who you want to carry, Set, probably the best god locked in here in this draft, I feel like you want to give your playmaker the best opportunity to make plays, and Set feels like that. As what in the world has Ven just picked? Opwash in the first game of the Smite World Championships. Mifflin, we saw Opwash once in Season 7, and it was Cherio trolling in the solo lane. And now when it matters the most, Ven pulls it out here for the Renegades.
Look, it's good for the anti-heal, right? You drop the 3 on whoever
Yeah.
Aphrodite's linked to, you find a stun, but as far as I'm concerned, Renegades are just trying to throw our notes out the window. I prepared a card here, and they don't want me to look at it. This is such an interesting pick, but it's going to create a very easy target for this set to jump onto. This Apwash is so immobile, doesn't have very good self-peel tools either. If his ultimate is ever down, that's a free pick.
It is worth noting that Empty the Crypts now has anti-heal on it innately, and we're certainly going to see a Divine Ruin here for Veneno. So you can get to 100% anti-heal very, very quickly on Apwash. But is this the big magic damage that you needed? Now, everyone who plays Assault and Joust knows that Apwash can be the big magical damage dealer, but he's much safer in those modes than he is in Conquest. Do you think that it can work here for the Renegades?
I think it can, because as far as burst damage goes and AoE, Apwash has all of that in spades. It's so unsafe. As you already highlighted, we see him in Joust and Assault because he's so much safer there. I'm worried, but they do have a very strong front line. The Renegades, that is. Tyr, Achilles, even Ratatasker are going to be an iron wall trying to create space so that Ben can find pressure on this Apwash. It's just whether or not they're able to perform on it.
What a way to kick off the Season 7 Smite World Championship, with getting an Apwash pick in game number 1, and an Aphrodite support at that. We've talked so much about Belt Slap being able to withstand the early game, and I feel like this Discordia and Nike are really there to be the barriers between the late game prowess of Belt Slap's draft and getting them to that late game. Discordia passive on someone like Nike, theoretically, I think that's where Belt Slap's going to be playing around, trying to put pressure on that lane and allowing Julio and Johnny to maybe get themselves a lead on that right side of the map.
That seems to be my idea as well. I think that they need to find pressure somewhere, and this set, if you just compare junglers up against Ratatasker, is going to be on a slower pace. You need about 2, maybe 3 items before I really feel like Set brings that pressure. We can find those solo kills where he can really do it on his own, whereas Ratatasker walks out of base, can finish his Acorn without having to go back, and immediately, the second he ticks over to level 5, is going to be trying to find pressure. I mean, likely, the second he ticks over to level 2 is going to be in the duo lane. I think keep your eyes on the junglers in this set.
That's going to be a huge deal for Lasbra because he has to be able to bring that same early pressure. You can't let this Belt Slap draft go late. You've got an insurance policy here for Renegades. Apwash late game is incredibly difficult to siege against, to defend sieges from. That's a huge part of Apwash's game, but Lasbra being that aggressor early on, I mean, has Belt Slap played against a more aggressive jungler all year? Almost certainly not. EU's meta in the SCC has been much slower and more methodical. Renegades, none of this draft, to me, says slow and methodical.
No, and just to put that into a frame of reference for you fans at home, if you haven't been keeping up with the EU SCC, legitimately 2 kills in 25 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Keep up with the SPL, we're 2 kills in 2 minutes, right? I'm not sure that Belt Slaps had to deal with that at all. This is going to be a whole new game of Smite for them, and I think it's going to come down to how well did they prepare for this, how well did they do their homework, have they studied up on how Renegades like to play? If they've done all that and they make the adaptations on the field, these guys are certainly competitors, and they've played at this level before.
I think a big deal here for Belt Slap is how good is their red buff defense going to be. That's been a calling card of this Renegade squad all year, invading those reds and those purples, and having those 2 globals, well, 1 global from Apollo, 1 semi-global from Ratatasker, means that Renegades can get there in force much more easily than Belt Slap.
Yeah, they are going to be looking for constant pressure. I'm keeping my eyes on the Tyr as well, and the Achilles. The rotation paths are going to be ridiculous. Awesome Jake, he loves playing aggressive. I mean, he's going to W key everywhere.
Finally, 276 days since the very beginning of the SPL in Season 7, we are ready to kick off the Smite World Championship. And what better way to do it than Apwash mid and Aphrodite support? It's what we all expected all along, I'm very, very sure. Belt Slap up against the Renegades, 2 teams looking to move on here in the Smite World Championship. Let's get it over to the casters, John Finch and Gormizer, to kick off Season 7 of the Smite World Championship.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aggro and Mifflin there on the desk. It is Finch and Gormizer here on the caster. SWC has officially begun. Let's go ahead and move into the action here. Renegades versus Belt Slap and Gore. You saw these drafts. We have some odd picks here. No Guardian to be seen. We got the Aphrodite for genetics and support. Veneno playing the Apwash mid. It makes some sense of this for me.
Well, already they're looking to get aggressive.
Yeah, it looks to be the case here from what I'm seeing. Look at Awesome Jake moving in onto genetics. No options there for him, though, to perhaps find a way to push them around so far. But this is what I would expect here from Renegades, right, Gore? Beltslap have played slow all year, right? Are they ready for this aggressive pace from Renegades?
I mean, it doesn't seem like it, especially you go the Aphrodite over here. I mean, this is just giving a free lane to Jake, right? It doesn't matter what Bear is going to be able to do. You have this tier over here who wants to fight like it's nothing. And so Genetics, yeah, you have all of the healing in the world, but you can't do anything about it against this tier. The pressure that they're going to have over here, it's just not going to be enough on the side of Beltslap. That being said, late game, I'm looking at all the damage numbers they have. If this Aphrodite can make it there, it's going to be a pretty interesting draft from Beltslap, but this is what you have to live through. Lasper's already looking out.
Yeah, who's better at this early gank than Lasbra? Not a soul, as he takes care of this purple buff invade. Renegades well, and they're starting as they intend to continue on right here. Goremizer stripping away farm, putting aggression over into this dual lane. Meanwhile, Johnny and Zero's prioritizing those oracles instead. Maybe not quite as good as defending that purple buff, but getting what they can, because they've got to be wary. Renegades are built for these first few minutes of the game.
And Jake, like, look, he doesn't even care about what Bera's doing. Bera's over there doing his purple buff by himself. He's going for the Alpha Harpy by himself. Jake is just set on one mode, which is Bully, and it is going to be locking him up.
Now, how often do you find the two-man Fearless Barracuda rolls in as well? Arkle taking more damage than he bargained for, but Genetics barely keeps the two of them standing. Beltslap already under that pressure we expected, Goremizer. So this is what they're going to have to get ready for. I don't know if maybe you rotate over Johnny. How do they handle this?
I mean, you can imagine that healing is going to be their key factor, right? Toxic Blade is the only item that realistically Jake or Barracuda would pick up that gives that anti-heal. I mean, maybe Jake gets something like a Contagion later, maybe a Pestilence, depending on what he wants to focus on, at least damage-wise. But realistically, the dual lane isn't where your main anti-heal, at least early on, isn't going to be coming here. So I think that Aphrodite, as much as it isn't going to get a lot of pressure against them, is going to be just enough to keep them alive throughout this early game. And Aphro support, I mean, we don't get to see it too often at Worlds. The last time I think we've seen it was, what, launch tournament? Like, it's not locked in a whole ton. But if it gets to that late game state, it can be pretty tanky, and that healing is just difficult to deal with.
Did I see that right, Gore? I think Arkle started with the Hog in that consumable slot. I saw it there at the tail end, so maybe a little bit less potions for him over there, but trying to make sure they've got that pressure to take down some camps here at the start, so something to keep in mind for them here going forward. We'll take a look now at the middle lanes. Venenu already level 5 on this off watch, so farming cleanly. And how do you expect Venenu to try and approach this? I mean, he's got to be Johnny's target in almost every time Johnny's looking to gank, right?
Yeah, I can't imagine going for anybody other than the really slow, easy-to-kill mage. I mean, like, he's not even going to have a good stun against you because you're not healing too often there as set. Like, you'll have some of that in your ult, but not enough to proc it and really cause Venenu to feel safe. And that's just confusing to me because you look at this op watch and you go back to what he was able to do, and at least in the Pro League, it didn't look good.
No, it didn't, but now Jake's the one in trouble. Arkle rolling in aggressively, but Barracuda there to provide some backup, so Renegades' dual lane is able to make it out of there, but I like this. Beltslap's starting to fight back in this dual lane, 2v2 now, so maybe Lazar can be the decider. He rotates over, but Beltslap have entirely backed her at this point. He'll find nothing, not even any farm to strip, so he'll take his back as well.
Yeah, they're not afraid. I think that's the biggest thing to note for Beltslap here. A lot of the worries, I mean, the Deskin mentioned it, the fact that EU SMITE kind of plays slow overall. I mean, you know, we're talking 5 kills, but it goes back, he might not be here, but Trickstank's interview after Wildcards was him saying he was about to fall asleep in those games. He's like, we're going 30 minutes and we're not killing anybody. I just want to fight. And I think even though he's not here, maybe that sentiment is there for Beltslap, right? They're ready for that aggression. They recognize it. They've been watching the SBL all year, and so they know Lasber's going to come over here. Lasber's on a signature pick in this Ratatosker as well. Someone you have to be very concerned about to make sure that you're not going to go, you know, too far forward in the lane. And they didn't have to worry too much about it. Jake's made sure they haven't left this tower line. So realistically, I think maybe Lasber's kind of falling behind. He might have been able to farm some kills otherwise.
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised we haven't seen that characteristic Lasber dual lane pressure. I mean, he stole that one purple buff, but we haven't seen anything else since then, so gonna have to figure out where it is that Lasber's looking to go throughout this point in the game here. But awesome, Jake is continuing to move on his journey. Genetics has found him in the jungle, but doubt there's any kill potential between those two. Just support slapping around, though it doesn't look traditional, does it, right? It's a warrior and a mage battling in the jungle.
So just 2 supports making sure to beat each other up. It's an Aphrodite and a tier. It's a different realm right now. But yeah, it's just the 2 supports hanging out. I'm really interested to watch this. The problem with support Afro, and you're seeing it right now, Jake, first off, has gotten a lot of farm. He's 2 levels up. That's where the danger's been.
Rotation here, though, from Johnny. Gets the slow into Barracuda, priority target. He has the ultimate, though, but chooses not to use it. But Jake with the peel hits the two-man pull. So now Johnny is low. Jake nearly wins the 1v3, but has to retreat. Barracuda comes in, finish, finds the first blood, and takes care of Johnny right off the back. Genetics has to retreat for his life, but how do Renegades turn it around in the 2v3, finds it too.
And that's why you always want Blink on tier. You get in, and then you go ahead and jump on out using your ult. Now Venenu's here. Arkle is stuck under here. If Jake had just a little more health, maybe about that much, they could have potentially dove under the tower here. But it looks like they're going to be content to take the farm. That is just, again, it comes down to it. Going into that, Genetics was level 3 trying to fight that. Jake was level 5, has the ult, has that Fearless ready, was prepared for the cooldowns. I think in any other world, a level 6 set from Johnny is the most frightening thing to see in a duo lane. But because that Aphrodite, of all things, is over there, he just doesn't have the same setup, the same peel that Jake was able to give to Barra.
Exactly right. And you made such a good point to say that they didn't have the level 5 there. The Undying Love might change that entirely, right?
Yeah.
But it's just not available for him that time, and that makes it difficult for him to compete. Here's a look back, though, at Barracuda taking the dive back into the action. That is vintage Barracuda to a T, isn't it? Aggressively diving into 3 and getting the kill.
And again, this Apollo pick was something that came out at the end of Phase 2, right? We didn't get to see it. In fact, in Wildcards, we saw it more in the jungle than we got to see over here in the duo lane. But Barra was one of the players outside of it, I think it was him and Zap, that were picking it up. And admittedly, if you're looking at people who have competed, especially at a world stage, playing Apollo, Barra and Zap are the two players that you expect to pull that out. The fact that he's on this pick, the ult is doing well, it's just a signature.
Venenu gets the relics forced out from him and the ultimate trying to stay safe. I think that this might be what we need to see more of, Gore. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of myself, but that duel lane's over, right? I mean, level 4 for Genetics, to level 5 for Arkle. They're both 3 levels down. You are not catching that back up no matter how much Johnny comes over there. I think Johnny might need to spend his time elsewhere. Like we just saw, Venenu has no relics and no ultimate. He's a sit and duck for that next gank.
But you could see, when that ult is available, you have to be very careful, Johnny, with your timers, because it takes up literally the whole lane. I mean, there's so much room for error there if you're on the other side that you have to be careful with your aggression if you're on Belt Slap.
And yet, here we see Johnny on the left-hand side of the map yet again, trying to do something about Awesome Jake and Barracuda's pressure, but Venenu and Lasper making the rotation. Genetics could easily be caught off here. Maybe Johnny as well. Jake is looping around underneath, but good awareness from Belt Slap. I think they saw the pressure, so they're backing up. But now they know it's a 4-man gank and duo, so they have to come back. Purple buff is stolen. Johnny makes his way in. Slow lands onto Lasper right at the start. No ultimate for Lasper in this fight, not for Venenu either. But that's it. The fight actually kicks off. Johnny and Genetics go safely, but in goes Johnny on the top side. Lasper is there to duel it out, but so far Johnny is winning this one for free. He takes a ton of damage, so does Lasper. In come the snipes as well, but Arkle can't find the necessary shots, so everyone survives on Renegades. Barracuda makes the lead, but Awesome Jake comes in the backside, exactly where you'd expect.
And this is the aggression. Look, Jake wants to go in. This is not a fight you want to take if you're Belt Slap.
No, not at all. Genetics ends up low, but it looks like they're able to retreat. Honestly, Gore, if they make it out of here, everyone alive, I think Belt Slap have actually come out of that a little bit ahead.
I mean, they get some of that farm back over there in the duo lane, which is probably the best thing for them overall, but at the same time, you could see the Renegades, even though they were in danger, at least it felt like they were in danger that entire time, they never took the fight. They never took the bait that Belt Slap were trying to get up. There's a point where Johnny, when he went in, he was able to find some really good damage against them.
Yeah.
I thought he was dead. I'm looking at a solo jungler out there alone. One stun is all it takes to lock you down. The fact that they got that much aggression and got away with it is solid. But we're still looking at almost a 3,000 gold deficit right now. And that's without a Gold Fury being taken. This is just 9 minutes of better farm from Renegades. And that's with an op wash, someone that we thought would be kind of abused pretty easily by Johnny. This, duo lane doing so well. You've got to figure out where you want to go forward with it. And so far, this duo lane, twice now we've seen Johnny go over there. Twice now we've seen him come away with nothing. Even if that last one was a little better, it's not amounting to much. I think it goes back to what you said. Go after Venenu and try to lock down this op walk.
To be fair, I mean, look at how much Arkle's been able to catch up. That was a 3-level disparity at one point, the same as it is oftentimes between the supports. It's level 2, it's 2 right now, but now up to 3. But impressive that he's been able to catch back up. Jake now making his way back over to duo, splitting some of this farm and forcing Genetics' hands. He also comes over to try and defend, but now this purple buff is up and being invaded again. Gore, I don't know if Belt Slap have gotten a single purple buff all game.
No, and that's actually where you see it. If you look at the net worth, you'll see about 1,000 gold advantage for Barracuda, and that's going to be a hefty chunk. I mean, he's finished his boots already ahead of where Arkle is, but he started that next tier 3. The fact that he's already also Apollo on top of that, so he can kind of be anywhere that your team needs him, is going to set him up for success. That ult is crucial. Every time that blue diamond is filled in for Barracuda, you know that he can rotate in or follow up on Jake's aggression the way we've been seeing it, or just save himself in the case of danger.
I like this, but they're gonna have to be quick with it. Genetics had a ward down there, so they know this is starting. And yeah, great rotation in. Renegades have some deeper wards, knew the rotation was coming. Genetics on it. And so they pick up the Gold Fury. But I like this from Renegades.
Yes.
It's kind of to your point, right? They've got this big lead with Barracuda and Jake, and even a little bit for Venenu. They should be trying to pick fights, force Beltslap to come in, stop farming, and take fights they just cannot win.
Yeah, and you force them into that uncomfortable position, especially around your ults, right? When Venenu has that big ult available,
Yeah.
you know, Xeros is able to get a lot of damage down on the Discordia. When you have that Aphrodite kind of a second life given to somebody, it's frustrating to be on the other side. But that's where that anti-heal comes into the conversation again. Brawler's beat stick already finished there for Lasber, so when he's in the fight, that's going to help deal with that a little bit. And it's not finished yet, but just now started going towards that Divine Ruin for Venenu, but he also has that anti-heal in his kit. And that's going to be great around these objectives. In a Fire Giant pit, a Gold Fury pit, you just have such giant zone control.
Variety needs to be careful. Here comes the gank from Johnny. Uses the ultimate to escape, but Johnny is on the warpath. Has Blink, but so does Variety. He escapes with it topside, and that means Beltslap have to give up on the gank. And Gore, how valuable is it to have a solo laner that can live through those ganks like that?
Yeah, it's perfect for them, being able to stay alive like that. And Variety, again, kind of the question mark when you look at it. If he goes down, that's a very easy pick. But speaking of easy picks, yeah, Genetics, that's not the place you want to be. Use the ult. Granted, I guess you don't want to die with it, but now there's not going to be any opportunity for that savings. Managed to save the shell, but I don't know if you go in for this.
Arkle has a chance to steal, but all the shots came through too early. Good reset came through, and Renegades secure the Gold Fury. And you know what, Gore, what I'm seeing here, Renegades are playing clean. No disrespect to Beltslap here at all, but they're the SEC top team coming in. And if Renegade's plans are to be the ones lifting this trophy right next to me at the end, I think they got to win this one clean.
Yeah, no, and if they want to, like you said, lift that trophy up, this can't just be clean. It has to be 3-0. They don't, like, ever have doubts in our minds that anything's going wrong. Variety has to be able to 2v1 like this every time we come over to this lane. So far, he's been pretty successful in that regard. So if you keep up this pace, it's perfect for the Renegades, and they did exactly what they needed to. Early on, they get those 2 kills in the duo lane. They get Barra and Jake super far ahead.
Yeah.
Jake, maybe one of the most crucial members on this team to have that lead because of how well he can help carry Renegades. And then you can just relax. I mean, look, it's been 3 kills. 2 of those were before 5 minutes.
And now Jake's getting aggressive. Has already used the ultimate. Zero's pinned against the wall. Is able to get away from the damage from Venenu, though, and survive. No relics used either in that effort. So Jake does a great job of trying to pressure, but no overreaction from Beltslap at all, keeping it cool and easy. So instead, we can take a look at some of these builds. It's making some sense. Jake is going boots into Sledge, a little bit more bruisery than we might see from these supports normally, but he is playing the tier, so this tracks for me. And then this is what I was thinking from Barracuda. Berserker Shield coming in towards this build, so they're both kind of trying to leverage the lead they got.
And being able to go in for this, Barra knows because he's already ahead 2 levels, that boxing, that advantage is going to be in his favor. He doesn't necessarily need that next item, but you can actually see the shield build up for Arkle. It's kind of the same path that they're going forward with, which is going to help them later on in those team fights, at least in staying alive. I think Barra, at the end of the day, Apollo has just a little higher survival rate than a Rom. Once he goes up, he typically can come down wherever he wants versus Rom straight up down. But it also showcases, I think, the difference. Jake, like you said, can go into that Sledge, build more bruisery, has that silver breastplate now to just be able to build into whatever he wants, probably a sovereignty, a little bit more protections. But you can't get Thebes if you're him because you don't need it right now. You're trying to be aggressive. You can't get Thebes if you're Genetics because you're so squishy. You need those props online as soon as you can. He only has the sovereignty.
Well, now the Pyromancer for Renegades. It's Julio here having to try and defend basically on his lonesome, but of course, no real hope of doing that. But he's gotten these members pretty low, hasn't he? Lasber in trouble. Good use of the ultimate. He gets out of jail for free. Venenu, the next one who might be in some trouble, but he's back to the Tier 2 tower. So Renegades steal away that Pyromancer. It's really theirs, and they're going to make out like bandits, though. Johnny will at least come make sure they get this mid-tier 1.
Yeah, I mean, as far as map state goes, Beltslap are actually in a little bit of a better position. They've gotten 2 tier 1s, whereas Renegades have taken 0 towers. But these objectives continually going towards Renegades, they're worth just a little bit more than those tier 1s, so it's going to help keep the gold in their favor. And this is what I was waiting on. Now that Jake's hit level 12, we can see all the relics. Curse Donk for Variety makes sense. You want that anti-heal to come through. You've got some items for it, but you need something bigger. but they go for that shell, or that sprint instead, to make sure you can get away from the Nike slow as opposed to the Sunder.
Hey, do you ever dash out of trouble only for Jake to be waiting for you? Because that is what Johnny just did. He is still running for his life. The sprint being popped. Renegades want this kill. Eventually, Johnny will fall. His second time of the game, 0-2-0 for the All-Star from Belt Slap. And Renegades have done a great job of shutting him down so far.
You're one of the most mobile assassins. You're able to get out of there, and the tier of all people is chasing you down. Didn't even use his blink, by the way. Just decided to run you down. And the fact that they popped their Heavenly for that is kind of what caught me off guard the most. I think Jake would have wanted to hold on to that one. Again, good for that Nike. But right now, if you're not worried about Julio joining these fights, I guess you don't have much to worry about. You're finding these picks. The last 2 kills that Renegades have been able to pick up was isolating Genetics, now isolating Johnny. So far, Belt Slap's biggest problem has just been their positioning. They can't really roam their jungle safely.
Yeah, they've been so far behind from the beginning of the game. It's made it so difficult for them because look what Jake can do. He's in the jungle, nearly soloing Genetics, forcing those lovebirds out. A nice little heal solo for Genetics, not helping out the rest of the squad, and Renegades can go wherever they want, put pressure however they want. They've evened up the tower situation you were talking about before now with the mid and dual lane tier 1s being down, and now it's just a straight up lead right around 4,000ers.
And at this point, I mean, Jake, once again, taking a purple buff just because he can. Why not? Has the red buff around his belt. And by the way, that's Belt Slap's. So that's 2 buffs on the side of Belt Slap's map that have just essentially become Renegade's buffs.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I mean, that purple buff has been Renegade's buff the entire game. I don't know if Arkel's got the pleasure of having one around his waist. And then you start to look at where they can go next. That Primal Fury's coming up, which is going to be a pretty big point of contention, just because I think even though Renegades could rush and go for that typical 18-minute Fire Giant right now, put a Fury under your belt. It's going to feel good. It's going to help that Fire Giant go down a little bit faster, and it could bait Belt Slap again into a fight that's just not going to be favorable for him. Level advantage overall in favor of Renegades, and it's not by much. I mean, mid-jungle are tied. You only have that 1 level advantage for Variety. If you can get Genetics and Arkel to level 20 at any point in this game, it's going to take them a while, but that's going to help equal things out a little bit. The gold disparity will still be there. The item disparity will still exist, but that will at least put you on a level playing field.
Should help out some. Red buff looking to be secured by Belt Slap this time. A little bit of a dash coming in, but not enough. Renegades strip away that red buff. It goes right back to Jake, and oh, what about the Primal Fury? That is uncontested as Renegades find one more objective to go their way. Belt Slap, it is starting to slip away from them, at least here in Game 1. Remember, Gore, this is a best of 5. Right. It's best of 5 all the way through this week. So you'll have a chance to recover even after a bad Game 1. And maybe Julio can do it. He jumps in on the backside. Venenu drops his ultimate. Remember, Venenu has Blink, no Aegis, so once someone is on him, he might be in trouble. But Jake is doing the same thing to Arkel. Has to give up the chase. They come into the backline to peel for Venenu, and he still stands tall.
And just damage on damage. I mean, right now the snipes are going to be good. You get a return kill, but is it going to be enough?
No, probably not. They're going to lose Julio here. Barracuda gets the double kill. My man is turning back the clock, working on a fail knot right now. He doesn't even have that yet. Sitting on the honed edge, I believe, for that tier 2. So Barracuda should come back out with even more strength the next time we see him. And he is the killer right now. That's the guy you're looking out for. 3-0-3. I'd argue the leader of this Renegades team, right? And he's playing well exactly what they need him to.
And that's good for your mental, right? That's one of the things like we've talked about a lot for Renegades is real specifically the fact that they have bounced between this team that is phenomenal and this team that's not, really. And so you get Barra into a comfortable position. Barra's smile and laugh is literally infectious. Try talking to him. When he smiles at you, you cannot help but smile back. And I think that's just good for them. If he's in a good mood, then everybody on Renegades, I think, is going to stay afloat. And realistically, I mean, look, you lose Vin. That's going to hurt, but also, Vin's the easiest one to kill on that squad,
yeah,
so realistically, that's what you expect. Every team fight should go that way. If you're going to lose one, it's going to be the op wash, but as long as he dumps his kit before he goes down, still feeling pretty good about it.
I think he's accepted it, right? Without that Aegis, he's instead elected to pick up the Blink. I think he's saying, hey, if you guys make it onto me, fine, I'll die. But most times when you don't, I am going to punish. So we'll see how that works out for him. As now the Pyromancer getting started. Riley on zone duty, but hardly a zone needed. They burn through the Pyromancer so quickly. So now, what, nearly 8,000 gold in the lead for Renegades?
That's a lot of gold.
They haven't even looked at the Fire Giant yet. This has been coming from Furies and stealing buffs and kills. And the only person that's fallen on their side is Venenu. Such a comfortable position here for the Renegades, boys. If you're a Renegades fan, I know there's a lot of y'all out there, this is exactly how you wanted them to look in Game 1.
Yeah, this is what you needed, right? And especially because coming into this, it was a little iffy. I mean, they're your 4th seed, technically, but I had to have that written down on a note card this morning to remember it. Like, it's not something that comes to your mind immediately. They've been sitting around that 6th spot pretty much all year, fighting for 5th sometimes, fighting to stay away from 7th sometimes, and they never really made that jump until playoffs. And it seems like if this is going to be, I want to say maybe even the inverse Sanguine effect, at least from what we've seen so far, where, you know, maybe you didn't show up in the regular season, but now you're starting to pop off when it matters. That's the biggest deal for them. And like you said, if you're a Renegades fan, you're happy to see it. Belt Slap, I mean, they still have time on their hands, but not a lot.
You gotta get out of there a little quicker than that, Johnny. Good stun coming out from him on the tail end, though, so that means they can't keep up the chase. Jake is low, but the snipes are not accurate. And listen, Mifflin and Aggro, I don't know if there's two people in the world I like giving credit to less than those guys, but didn't they kind of nail this one on the death score, right? I mean, this Genetics Aphrodite support has been too little pressure. Jake's 5 levels up. He's tied with the mid laner in jungle because he's been bullying him.
If you were playing, I'll say a Ymir, because that's something we've seen Jake on, and seen him play from behind, you have your freeze, you still have a wall, you still have your carpet, your ult, and you're tanky enough. I mean, level 12, you're not happy about it. You're definitely getting taken down. But with a Sovereignty and a Genji's Guard, you're feeling pretty solid as a Guardian. The fact that you're a mage here and you still have that lower health bar, the protections aren't going to be anywhere near as inherent in your levels, it's really affecting them. Plus, I mean, let's just face it, the setup from Belt Slap doesn't really exist. If you want Genetics to be up there to get a kiss for a stun, it's single target 1, and you better hope it connects.
Jake has now used the ultimate to get to the backline. Arkle is the target, standing tall for now, but now he's been hit in the background. And you are right, Johnny is low. Barracuda goes up, so does Lasbra, but Venenu is the one in trouble. He's fallen in the back, but Lasbra gets one to even up the score. In comes Barracuda like an action hero, and he helps take down one more. It's Arkle that's fallen. Lasbra somehow skirts death. My man's a magician as he pulls off the tricks. Jake has now locked down Genetics. One more member looking to fall as the executes there. Julio drops. Genetics should be right behind him, and Renegades has a run through this team fight.
And at this point, a little bit of a stagger. It's not much, but you have Genetics a little behind. That cooldown there, his respawn timer, I should say. Maybe cooldown, considering he's got 4 deaths. At this point, he's just coming back up. It's going to be right on par with everybody else because of his low level, but that gives you just enough time here to wipe a Fire Giant for free. Zeros is on the other side of the planet. Couldn't even try to contest this if he wanted to because the damage he has is not going to be enough. His hook bar is not going to be helpful. And all the while, you only have 2 people on Renegades doing this. Lasbra's going for a gank, might even be able to find Zeros in the meantime.
Now, they do manage to get the tier 2 tower, they get the Fire Giant, and now Zeros, as you covered, is in some trouble. No chance he gets out of here. I think my man's going to be angry about his perfect KDA. He's at 0-0, second on his team in player damage, and Lasbra's about to steal it from him. He's still styling a little bit. Did you see the leap good through the dash from Lasbra? Zeros putting on a show, but no chance he can live there, so Lasbra cleans up that kill. And now fires on all 5 members. Renegades can go wherever they like.
And the check marks for Renegades are all there. Look, you have another fight. Everybody gets some kills. Variety goes big. You get Lasbra getting another kill. Jake and Barra finding their lockdown and using that lead. And also Venenu dies in there, which is exactly what you're trading off, right? And he gets that damage off first. He makes sure that Genetics is not able to find a useful heal. The shell meant nothing. I don't think I even saw it pop off, so when it came up, it disappeared. And the ult didn't necessarily help save anybody and prolong their life. Once that Fire Giant comes through, you already got that left tier 2. Variety pushes that right tier 2. There's only 1 tower standing between Renegades and success. Other than that, it's 13,000 gold. It's very difficult to lose from this position if you're Renegades, and this is what you want out of them coming into this. No questions, nothing to be worried about. You are looking at a team that has done their homework, and it's coming in prepared.
This has been very, very clean here from Renegades. Only Venenu dying, and now Cloud grabbing this last tier 2 tower on the map. So they can, if they wish, start looking to clean up this Phoenix, but looks like they're going to head back towards Gold Fury instead, take that. Maybe even look for a reset before they come out, but I wouldn't say that from the way that the rest of Renegades are positioning. Jake and Lasbra and the boys have moved over towards right and pushing up those minion waves. But now Venenu and Barracuda are backing, so it will be a reset after all, and they'll still have plenty of time left on this fire to start threatening some Phoenixes.
And this is where things can get a little shaky, right? Again, you had mentioned this. It's best of 5.
Right.
I think if you are going to test the waters with an Aphro support, Game 1 is the one to do it. It's maybe not the best to open with and say, hey guys, this is what we're doing this tournament, but it is absolutely the best time in a set to go ahead and try out something that you're maybe not going to be too comfortable with. If this works against the Renegades, then you already have something else in your pocket for the rest of the tournament. If it doesn't, okay, hey, Genetics, let's go back and play some of those other things that you were playing in the SBL. Let's bring out those Kepris and things like that if you're able to. But there were a lot of support bans, both against Jake as well as from Renegades against Genetics here. And I'm wondering if that pool, at least for Genetics, is going to be affected by that. If they're able to control this Aphrodite this well, I'm just wondering how well Renegades can keep this up. Was this gifted to them because of their aggression, or are they going to be able to continue the fight? As of right now, they don't even have to worry about it. I mean, there's still a 5-level lead over there in the support role, 1 level up still for Barracuda, and he's not really sweating the fact that Arkel's catching up at this point.
No, he's not even worried about it a little bit, is he? I mean, he's been having such an impactful game. He now has this crit build fully online, fail not win even into the Deathbringer. I can't think of anybody on Belt Slap who would happily take that amount of damage here at this point. So Renegades perhaps making what could be their final push. Lasbra will be pushing all the way over in the solo lane and a 4-man push in left. So they're completely splitting up the map and forcing Belt Slap to commit to a defense.
Genetics just picked up that Ethereal Staff. That amount of health with the prots he has online should help him survive in the fights, and this 1v1 is going to be crucial. If Lasbra either A, gets that Phoenix, or B, gets a kill, that's going to be huge for the Renegades. It's low enough, though, that he can play either way. With that ult, the rotation over to left is going to be no big issue for him, and so this is really good because realistically, you're just stopping Johnny from being in the fight.
It's a great point. Lasbra can get there so much faster than Johnny can, and he has a great threat on that right side, Phoenix. Now they're moving in, though. Empty the Crypts is already down, so you know the anti-heal is in full force. Genetics is a bit in trouble in the back as Julio has dropped his ultimate, but it has not helped the health bars of Belt Slap at all as Julio is forced to retreat. Lasbra gets the very first kill. Genetics in some trouble in the back, but so is Zeros. Lasbra gets himself a double kill. Variety puts Arkel in the dirt, and Renegades are now on the precipice of the very first victory of your SWC. Genetics has no chance to live, and Gore, that is it. It's wrapped up. It's all done. Renegades are going to end this one the second they're ready. A full deicide and a triple for Lasbra.
I feel like Barra might have been playing support this time. Look, 3-0-12, 12 assists on the Apollo of all things that come through. I mean, aggression from the very beginning. The one note I have at the very end there is, and we've watched a lot of Smite just this year, let alone over the years.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have seen a Nike's health bar disappear that quickly without a Sunder. I mean, that meant nothing. Julio gets a 4-man ult, massive shield, and then he's dead 2 seconds later. It did not mean anything to them. The lead was just huge for Renegades there, so I expect if they can keep that kind of pressure up, that we're going to be looking at them standing in these color lights more often.
Yeah, we talked about how Aphrodite support might be a little too weak to start up this game. It absolutely was. Renegades win game 1, but who knows what'll happen. Quick break, and we'll be right back.
Well, they are who we thought they were. It's Renegades winning through their duo lane, duo diff in game number 1 of the SMITE World Championship. Make sure that you are getting on Twitter and getting involved. Lots of discussion about how Jake was absolutely dominant in game number 1, and also a lot of discussion about how people are watching. If you want to get featured on the broadcast, just like Puffy's about to, you can use the Twitter hashtag SWCAtHome and get on the broadcast just like Puffy here has. Just like last year, we watch again with chat. Thanks for watching, Puffy, and hopefully you and all your viewers are having a great time watching the Renegades absolutely demolish Belt Slap in game number 1. In Mifflin, I'm not upset about how that game went for Belt Slap yet. I think that in a best-of-5 situation, you're allowed to have a game where you go, hey, I think maybe we could pick something like Afro Support, weather the storm, and get to late game and win that way. You get absolutely crushed. Now it's your job to go, okay, that hypothesis is wrong. We need to see Belt Slap make adjustments from here.
Adjustments, adaptations, a full swing, just different looking draft, I'm thinking. It felt like to me personally that Belt Slap was trying to play the exact same style they'd been bringing to the SEC all year, and this was the field test. Clearly it's not working at the SPL level. For a moment, it did feel like Belt Slap was going to be able to wrestle control of the early game off of a 5-minute gank, and then Jake just simply built different, hits a double fearless to turn around the entire fight, as we're seeing here. I mean, it's just crazy how much pressure the Renegades was able to establish.
I mean, Jake and Barra they just finessed him. in this play. The 2v3, and I tweeted about it right afterwards. Like, this is worst case scenario because both Barra and Jake are momentum-based players. To give them that much confidence really early on in a game, I just felt like the game was over from that exact minute, and it really felt that way after that. I mean, Jake was up 4 or 5 levels all game long over Genetics. Now, again, I get it. Beltslap playing with Genetics as a sub, playing from European ping. There's a lot of things that they have to battle here, but I think fundamentally their picks and bans in that game made it near impossible for them to win.
Completely agree. I mean, if you just take the microcosm of dual lane and try and evaluate what is Aphrodite Rom trying to do in that lane, I wouldn't say they're trying to find pressure. I wouldn't say they're trying to win that lane. It's just survive. It's just make it to that late game. And unfortunately, this time around, it doesn't work out. I want to see Beltslap make some adjustments in the bans as well. Lazra is looking really good on that Ratatasker. You can't let him get this pick again. I don't want to see Variety get away with this Achilles. He was looking incredibly dominant as well. Renegades have the field as far as my mind goes. They can do whatever they want and can do no wrong in these P's and B's. Not only do they have the advantage, but they're also the heavy favorite. They can play around, try and establish something new. Maybe we see Apollo jungle.
Maybe they could. I mean, Apollo clearly working for this squad, though I don't know if I'd ever want to take it out of Barracuda's hands with how well he just piloted that pick. I think the ball is in Beltslap's court now, right? That game 1, best of 5, again, I think that you can come in with a theory and have it be wrong. You just have to be ready with a backup plan. Let's see what that backup plan is for Beltslap as we're ready with picks and bans here for game number 2. They are still in that first pick position. And don't forget that in game number 1 of this set, 5 healers were banned, the 6th primary healer being Aphrodite, and she was locked in as support there for Genetics. I wonder if Beltslap are going to continue with that, ban away a lot of the healers sort of strategy, but this time not pick Aphrodite support themselves.
But it looks like Beltslap a little bit more worried about the awesome Jake 408. And can you blame them?
No.
Could you legitimately blame them after the diff that we saw in game 1? It's going to be the Ymir ban this time around again. But I think the healers should be a mainstay in that ban column, likely for the entirety of this set, because of how dominant it can be, how we've seen them control the game. If a healer pulls a lead in the early, it's almost nigh unstoppable. How are you going to wrestle back control around these objectives, around these elongated team fights? Not that the fights really went that long in game 1.
Well, things have certainly changed since the last time we saw SPL regular season. It is now first pick Apollo time at the SMITE World Championship. Didn't take long to get there, I suppose. Worth noting that Ra, the one healer that was banned in game 1, now switched out for a set ban despite Beltslap being that number 1 overall pick. Maybe feeling like that doesn't bring enough early pressure, and Apollo could. We saw a lot of teams experiment with this Apollo jungle during the SCC wildcards. I don't remember exactly if Beltslap did it. I think they did. I think Johnny did end up playing that Apollo jungle a little bit. It's a flex pick here for Beltslap. How do you feel about Apollo jungle? Blanket statement.
How long do I have to talk about it? I've got a lot of emotions about this pick. Apollo jungle brings so much pressure. It's the best jungle ultimate in the game, full stop. I'm not willing to argue. Some people might say Fear No Evil. Some people might say, Anvil of Dawn, something along those lines. Too. But Apollo ult is a true global. It's fantastic damage. The CC to forge your team, as well as the Mez on landing. It's going to let your team group up around you, set up, or at least burn away the beads. I think it brings so much pressure.
And Beltslap's not trying to hide anything. They lock in Rom right after the Apollo. So unless we're going to see something shades of Whirlwind or Baskin, the Apollo mid, or the Rom mid, we're going to see Apollo jungle. It looks like to me. I can't imagine you're putting Apollo in one of the other side lanes there for Julio and lack some of that front line. We're going to have time to get into the Apollo jungle later on in the draft. Maybe I should save it before we go into game number 2. As Discordia is the pick this time for Renegades, no Opwash once again for Venenu. Instead, he goes to the Disco, and when Jake is having a game like he had in game number 1, imagine him with Discordia passive giving him extra power at the same time. I feel like this Disco can really seamlessly fit into what Renegades want to do.
Absolutely. Jake was top damage for the first 15 minutes of that game out of the support role. Even longer. Imagine with that passive, as you already highlighted, and with that early lead, with the confidence of game 1 under his belt as well. This guy was W keying at the 2-minute, just cold start in the World Championship here, and now he's willing to run with it with pressure. I think the Renegades, they've got hot hands right now, and Barracuda seems to feel the same way. Scotty, wow.
Okay, so there were like 4 gods at the very end of the last week of SPL regular season that hadn't seen play. And it was Apollo, Scotty, Loki, and Opwash. And now we've seen 3 of those in 2 games as Apollo goes one way, and now Barracuda goes to his signature Scotty. Now, Barra did play Scotty numerous times during that week and looked awfully good on it. So not too surprised with that one, I suppose, but certainly something to watch out for. As Beltslap could get away with highway robbery with these last 2 picks. Khepri and Ra are the hovers. Khepri locked in there for genetics. We saw a lot of that from him on the highlight reel that we played earlier on, so we know he's comfortable on that. Now a Ra in the mid lane for zeros. This Beltslap composition looks awfully good to me if you're a believer in Apollo jungle.
And I am. I think this Beltslap composition is just plain strong. There's no other word for it. The Khepri getting away with that 9th pick, insane. Ra making it through the second phase of bans, insane. They've made up for the early game as well, having the Hercules in their draft, so now they'll have a bridge to get them to the point in the game where they're most comfortable. Beltslap loves that 30-minute mark, and if they get there, that's where they become competitors. But Renegades are doing the exact same thing they did in game 1. It's just raw pressure. It feels like, to me, Beltslap are going for the same strategy. Let's make it the late game and fight there.
I do think it is more early game centric than their last composition,
Agreed.
though, isn't it? I mean, you've got a Khepri Rom lane, which has very good kill pressure and very good push potential early on. Now you've got Hercules, who has solo kill potential in the solo lane. And if you're telling me you think Apollo was a pressure pick in the jungle, then I think Beltslap have really fixed all of their flaws from game 1.
I think they've certainly got the ability to bridge the gap better, but there's still, if you look at this draft, the best case scenario for them is that late game team fight, the CC setup for the Raw, the double ADC in the late game, something along those lines. They're going to be at their strongest when every single one of these guys is full slotted. It's going to take a long time to get there, but as you've already highlighted, their early game is already so much better that I think they really do have a fighting chance of making it to that point.
I think that you're right to bring that late game up as well, because Apollo jungle, I'm not as much of a believer as you are, but at the end of the day, if you get to level 20 and you're 6 items, you're not Apollo jungle, you're Apollo, right? I mean, you're going to be building very similarly to most traditional ADCs at that point, so it doesn't really matter where you were in the early game. My concern for Beltslap in this game, Miff, is their mid game. Last game we saw a 4K lead at 14 minutes for the Renegades. If you're in that position as Beltslap, this draft has 0 comeback potential, right? I mean, this draft cannot afford to fall behind.
They really can't, but they have the tools to keep themselves from falling behind. Hercules as a stopgap just to create space. Khepri with the Scarab's Blessing should be able to keep you from spilling at least a little bit in the early game, but I absolutely agree. The huge contention point here is whether or not Beltslap is going to be able to weather the storm throughout the early and the early mid game. In game 1, no shot. It didn't look like they could. They crumbled almost instantly. In game 2, and with the knowledge of what Renegades are going to try and do, if they defend their red buff better this time around, I think they can do it.
But at the same time, man, you see this Scotty tier lane now for Barra and Jake, and Scotty maybe not as scary as the Apollo in that lane, but still feels like early pressure is the call here for the Renegades. Do you think the Renegades go up 2-0 with this draft?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're the SPL team, man, of course. the North American, too. I got to get that homeroom advantage as well. Look, the Renegades have shown me enough in Game 1 that I think that they could make a run here just full stop. We've had this conversation that the Renegades have been this hot and cold team. It looks to me like they're playing hot.
They certainly have in game number 1 of this set. Game 2 looking to be more of the same, a very similar draft from the Renegades here in game number 2. Just a couple switch arounds. All eyes on Johnny's Apollo jungle from here. The Transcendence build is the way to go, right? I mean, that's the only thing you can do in the jungle if you want to leverage that ultimate.
Transcendence is the best way to go. It's not the only option, but if you go anywhere else besides Transcendence in the early for Apollo, you are sacrificing so much of your early game. It's just almost undoable.
It's going to be interesting to watch how Beltslap is going to make it work. And I think that this could be really, really good for Beltslap. I mean, if they come out and make this Apollo first pick jungle look strong, then that's going to change the course of the rest of this tournament. Remember, every game being played live, every team watching the other games be played before them. This is going to be a real test run for this Apollo jungle. The big thing for me is, can this Rom Khepri lane do a little bit better? I mean, level 1, we saw Jake and Barra gunning it down on the enemy purple buff. feel like Rom Kepri has a lot more fight potential than they had last game.
Absolutely. Abduct is just a raw tool to engage or disengage fights as well is going to be fantastic. We're not going to see the exact same situation where Jake can walk at you at level 3 and find a double fearless in the 2v3 situation. It's not going to go down the exact same way. I think that, if anything, having Genetics on a much more comfortable pick as well. We saw all his highlights. He was playing Kepri. This is going to be huge for him.
The Achilles execute is available on the other side, so that's a little bit scary for me. I think that Zeros also has gone really under the radar. We didn't talk about him really at all in the last picks and bans. He gets 9th pick raw here in this game, and with healers being so much of the conversation, that feels pretty big for Beltslap.
Not only is it a fantastic healer, though, Ra's going to bring that damage output, and they've got the setup with the Kepri. The Abduct into the Searing Pain, that's an easy tool to use.
We'll see if Beltslap can make it work here in game number 2. A bounce back necessary after that game 1 performance. Let's see if they can get it done. Game number 2 coming at you right now between Beltslap and the Renegades.
Gore still here as we move into game 2, and Beltslap arguably have one of the best drafts you could have here at this point. We get our first test for Apollo Jungle here as well, so we get to see exactly how it works here. Gore, I got to assume we're still leaning towards Renegades, though, despite this excellent draft from Beltslap.
I think it's still something that favors the Renegades long term, but it is that question of, you know, last time you were playing with a pretty massive advantage early on. This time around, you're not going to be able to get that as easily. You're not going to have Jake getting every single purple buff this game. You're not going to be able to find the, you know, simple plucks early on as well to make sure that you lock them down. So there's a lot of question marks, I think, around the early game here for the Renegades more often than it is really whether or not Beltslap can contend.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to prove to us that they can make this work when they don't have such an obvious advantage from the early game this time around, right? And we know that was what they worked with, but the tier back in Awesome Jake's hands. Barracuda is on this Scotty this time around as well, so we know that's one of his comfort picks, and Jake's getting aggressive right off the bat, looking to see if he can push them off the wave a little bit, and instead, we're seeing Genetics pull off a bit. I thought he might be going off to maybe split some other farm elsewhere, but he goes right back into the dual lane, gives some of that over to Arkle.
I expected him, again, maybe more aggression out of Jake, although this is that awkward period, at least this tier, where realistically, you're not going to do as much damage overall. You're not going to be anywhere near as safe either. You're going to take a lot more. One good pluck from Genetics, especially with Arkle here on a ROM, is going to be enough. You get Johnny over there, forget about it. It's going to be an easy kill onto Jake, so he's not going to be anywhere near survivable as last time either. I think the turnaround potential for Beltslap a little bit better. But it's the late game that I'm really more worried about. Yes, you have 2 hunters. That's great for ripping down structures. The Raw, great for team fights, but Jake just doesn't seem to care about any of that. I don't think you're going to get the opportunity to really utilize that.
No, he does not seem deterred here, does he, at this point? But there's so much strength on this Beltslap roster, right? I mean, Apollo Jungle has been dominating the rank scene lately, and Raw, arguably the best mage in the game. I think he and Persephone could have a great discussion about that one. Genetics can really stall out Renegade's aggression if he's able to land those Scarab's Blessing with the right timings. And we all know how strong Rom is. I mean, this is just a good draft from the bottom up for Beltslap this time around. And Renegades are going to have to brute force it a little bit more. Last game, it felt like maybe they had him a bit outclassed. I don't think it'll be as easy this time around.
Okay, it's got to be a little unnerving. Like, look, Beltslap, actually even more so, you've got the NRG Chrono statue, like, right next to you. You have to be the embodiment of that European team, right? Your predecessors, I think, that come through. But the problem was, is last time it felt maybe a little too European. It was very slow. They weren't able to get the kills. Granted, I give a lot of that pressure over towards where Genetics was, but right now it's all Renegades. Arkle's pretty low.
And there's a pull coming through from Genetics. Not quite enough damage to get any kills into Barracuda or anything like that, but that's some pressure onto him, isn't it? The relics forced out. Looked like he did have to use those beads. So Barracuda, especially on someone like Scotty, a good deal more vulnerable.
Yeah, and being able to find that lockdown could be really solid for them, but as of right now, it doesn't seem like they're going to be able to do it. Again, at this point last game, we were trying to make up for a 2-level, 3-level deficit.
Right.
And this is
already
great
better
for Beltslap just to hold on to this. And honestly, on paper, I'm looking at Ra, I'm looking at Kepri, I'm looking at Rom, those 3 in those roles, all objectively better, I think, than what we had locked in for Beltslap.
Yep.
Then you add in late game that there is a Hercules on board that can find good pluck potential on top of that Abduct that comes down from Genetics. So there's a lot of good displacement. It's just, can you make up for this?
Jake finds a 2-man push, though, and now Barracuda can start to look for some aggression. Does not quite able to get in there and find any kills, but things still look pretty good for him, and they're able to put that much pressure out. Lasma rotating over on top of a ward, so Beltslap certainly know he's here. Looks like Lazarus won't be able to find anything, and that's something different, isn't it, this set? We were used to
Yeah.
Lazarus doing very early ganks in duo. None of those have materialized.
Lazarus plus Ratatosker should equal early ganks on the duo, and honestly, it should equal a win every single time. At least what we've seen in the past, this has been ban-worthy against the Renegades and hasn't necessarily hit that mark so far, as Beltslap have let him have it twice. But admittedly, he didn't do too much in the early game last time, as you just mentioned. He did end, what, 6-0-3 or something? Game. So he had a really solid game. It was just getting there that was the problem. And to get there, again, I mentioned at the end, but like, what, 3-0-11, 3-0-12 was Barracuda on the Apollo. I think it still has the potential. It's just waiting to come online. And once he finishes that Acorn, I believe we'll start to see him maybe be a little more hands-on. That ult is going to be pretty good at helping lock down zeros on this round.
Well-timed aggression there. Genetics able to abduct to get away from Jake, but Jake keeps up that pressure. Look to see if maybe he can lock him down a bit more. Genetics makes it back to the tier 1 easy peasy though. Nothing to worry about. Will they use the ultimate to push the wave up? No problem there either. Just gonna take a little bit of time instead of sitting there clearing. So far, this has been much better from Beltslap, hasn't it? They're still a little bit behind in gold. Perhaps there's areas where Renegades are doing a little bit of extra farming, stealing some away, but for the most part, Beltslap are competitive, but now Lasper gets aggressive. They have Genetics knocked up. He still has, no, he doesn't have the Scarab's Blessing yet. He's level 4, so he's a sitting duck, but they just don't have the damage. They make their way back out of there, and the big rotation in from Johnny, who finds first blood. Beltslap looking way better this time around.
That's exactly what you need. Now the snipe's going to be coming down, and they're looking pretty good. Vin's low.
Not quite able to find that kill, though. Didn't have the damage to finish it off, but look at this answer back from Beltslap. If you thought this SCT team after game 1 was going to roll over, that has not been the case.
I mean, this is very solid, I think, from Renegades from top to bottom, but even better from Beltslap. That is why this Apollo jungle has been very big. It's what gave Barracuda an advantage last time around. Do you think you can get that low and get away from him in game 1? The answer was no. Genetics dies there for first blood in game 1. But because you, again, this tanky nature that's coming through from the Capri, not as easy to abuse as that Aphrodite last game.
Exactly.
And the fact that your jungler is going to be able to keep up, maybe even better than Lasbra in terms of rotations, is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, there's that dunk back in from him, able to make that work pretty well for him. I mean, this is why Apollo's so strong. You just said it, right? It's like Thor ult, but
better?
Better, yeah, right, in every single way. I mean,
better damage.
Better
range.
range.
It doesn't stun,
yeah,
but
it's so good, isn't it? And that's why he's been so popular, and it's working for Johnny so far. We're looking to him to keep that up, and just like Mifflin said, I think we are seeing a transcendence come from him soon. He's on that charge Morningstar now, so wouldn't be surprised if he gets it. It's a little slow at the start, but it is so worth it once it's finished and stacked.
And that was such a big kill over there as well. Not only to get first blood for this, but also to get it on your jungler and to equal up the gold lead. It makes Jake feel kind of pointless right now. I mean, look, he's got the boots. He's not tanky enough to really withstand this onslaught of damage. He took half his health just there. He's tiered. You switch to blue stance, you go to a wave, you're perfectly back up to full health. But you don't want to have to use your cooldowns that way. Last game, again, he was able to get a little more aggressive. And I think right now what Beltslap have done is put a damper on that early aggression from the Renegades, which is going to slow Jake down. It's not going to stop him, and he still has those capabilities late game. The same things that are troublesome early on maybe just get worse and exacerbated as the game goes on, because now it's Arkle in trouble, it's Zeros in trouble. But until he gets to that point, he can't really blink in and feel as safe. He's going to go for the Sledge again. He's going to go the same Bruiser route, and that'll help him out, but he has to take his time.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we'd see the Warrior Tabi into Sledge from him again, considering last time he had such a big lead. But you kind of covered it, right? When Tier's in that blue stance, he's able to get away with maybe not having as much as protection as everyone else because he gets some there from the kit, so makes some sense what he's doing. And they're looking for a bit of a red buff invade, though. Johnny is lying in wait. Jake is still waiting as well. Johnny has it low, but Jake's not going to get in there in time. This is such a big difference. They're defending all their buffs. They got first blood this time around. When they're not getting dumpstered immediately, Beltslap are easily competitive with Renegades so far.
And I like the way that they play that. Not only Johnny just kind of sitting there waiting, like, we're going to get this red buff, but also from Jake, he drops down that vision shard. Yeah, that ward's not going to mean anything to you for the most part. It's not going to catch any big rotations, but it gets him the timer. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that Beltslap haven't been able to kind of keep up with. Renegades are still playing 5 minutes from now. Like, that's their plan.
Yeah,
they're thinking ahead when that buff comes back up, and that's something that Beltslap are going to have to stay on top of. Right now, they're doing everything right, but are your chess moves putting you into a position that you're just going to get checkmated because Renegades are 3 steps ahead of you?
Cor, I kind of got chills when you said that the first time. Playing 5 minutes ahead. That's good stuff as Lasbra lurks on this solo side. Once again, this has been good warning. It helped them out earlier on in the game, and now It's down from Julio again. So he knows that Lazarus here uses the ultimate to make sure that he can push the wave quickly and they can't pressure him under the tower. Just great stuff from Julio over here to be defensive. And now Genetics showing some presence just to make sure Julio doesn't get bullied out. Johnny's here as well. This
I mean, honestly, they could find some pressure. Zeros is safe under tower. You know you don't have to worry about your mid laner right now. It doesn't look like that's going to be the big aggression. This is the other side of the Apollo jungle, and I would argue maybe the downside of it. You're great at rotating into a fight, maybe a little bit late, right? If Julio starts an engagement, Genetics starts an engagement, you're going to be there, and you're going to make a difference because you land in the back line. Bear's in trouble, Lasbra, Venenu, all of them in trouble. But how do you start a fight as Apollo? I mean, do you dash in? I don't want to dash in. Do you ult in? I want that one as well to make sure I can maybe chase someone down or get out of there. I feel like he's going to lack on his engage potential, the gank potential that comes through. His damage is always going to be there, but it relies really heavily on Genetics and Julio to make sure it's set up.
Well, Johnny's got a decent lead in the jungle there. Does be about a level and a half or so that he's working with here at this point. Awesome Jake getting aggressive, but it's not like the Afro from last game. You are going to have some trouble cutting through a Kepri tank boots into Sovereignty. I don't think Jake's going to be a problem for Genetics. Not in his own damage, maybe instead of, but not going to have the same bully potential that he had last game. But they are here for this purple buff defense. Try and strip that one away.
You can see, yeah, maybe you'll protect this one. You lost your red buff, though, and that's what that ward was for earlier. Now it looks like Renegades want to get aggressive.
Oh, but Jake is in trouble. He got melted. Johnny on the board yet again. This time, we're seeing the SCC All-Star stand up. And now he's going up with the ultimate, looking where he can land in the back line. Not seeing much, but he does. Dunk on the Lasbra. Makes the ultimate up with Zeros. Flattens him with the ultimate. Great work from Belt Slap. They're up 3-0 over the SPL right now.
I mean, that was just roadkill. There was nothing left after that one. Lasbra didn't even have the chance to, and he didn't even get to think about the branch, the view from up there. He was gone before it could be taken. And this is the scary, it's the Johnny effect. This is something that happens every time we've watched and cast Belt Slap all year. I do my best to not talk about the jungle, and then he ends up 2-0 and 1 and makes a huge difference, right? I think that's the biggest thing. If you can control this jungler, that is crippling the Belt Slap if you knock him out from underneath them. But right now, he's not only got that lead that you mentioned, he's got a couple kills under his belt. They get that Fury for free. You get that red buff. You look like you want to get aggressive, but Jake is not tanky enough to pull this off.
Beads forced out from Arco, though, as Jake shows his presence. The slows are there from Barracuda to make life harder from Arco. Forces out the ultimate, and now Barracuda can wait because we know where Arco's landing. There's the damage coming through, and Renegades get on the board. This dual lane ain't giving up yet.
What a good dunk. Right? Yeah. I mean, Calder comes through waiting for the kill. Barra didn't even have to look at it. I was really stressed out for a second.
Me too.
Because I thought, okay, Arkle goes up, cancels it immediately. Not what I expected to see out of him. And then you roll under tower, you walk away, you're fine. But the fact that the dog was waiting there is one of the things. Again, Barra, the most successful on this Scotty. I think he had a 100% win rate when he played it there at the end of Phase 2. He's looking to try and keep it that way. As if these Searing Pains keep hitting, Lasbra's got to rethink everything about this game.
Yeah, he is going to be in trouble if Zeros is hitting like this. Aggro said it on the desk, though. We didn't get to talk much about Zeros last game. At least it felt that way, right? But now he's on a top-tier mid-lane mage, and he's got a real chance to make some noise. He's already done it. Buried Lasbra before he can even get the ult off, hitting him again with the snipe through the wall. If Zeros keeps this up, if Johnny keeps this up, Beltslap might have a real shot here.
And they've got a lead. I mean, they're not much ahead, right?
It's
Over
nice.
1,000 gold is a cushion, right? You can make maybe one mistake and then you just end up even. But you have to figure out what to do with it. They've been really adept at this all year. Again, how well do the Renegades play against it? They've been planning kind of ahead of themselves so far on the Renegade side. Right now, it seems like they don't have much in terms of the ability to contest. With that Aussie online now for Johnny as well, attack speed coming online, but I'm thinking more of what we've seen. Realistically, I'm going to say out of Zapman and Barracuda in the jungle, Aussie is the best thing in a jungle because you hit that low threshold, you walk back, you auto one camp for a few minutes. Alongside that Assassin's Blessing, you're full health. If you're Johnny here, you get a second chance at a team fight. That could be crucial for Belt Slap as this game continues.
They get the Pyromancer on the right side. Now they're here for purple. Jake comes flying in, though. Does bully Arkle a good bit, but Zero's here as well. Jake gets out of the range of the slow, and Calder does some good damage to Arkle on the backside of it. But the purple buff is defended successfully there for Belt Slap. I like the way they've been playing this, man. They've been going to objectives. They have looked for this pressure, and this is great for them, right? This is a A shout out to the whole SPL as Barracuda has to use speed, takes a ton of damage, but Jake is there to save the day again.
Zeros.
But I don't think Barracuda knows. Zeros on the way. Zeros gets his speed force out. Now he has to worry about the snipes coming through as well, but a well-timed Aegis will not be enough. Johnny dunks in, and another kill for Belts that make it a second as they improve to 5-1. Renegades are looking around. They don't know where to go.
Hey, remember all that stuff we were saying about how Renegades want a clean game,
Right?
and how you need this to look really good? This is the polar opposite of everything we were saying in game one. You are the team that is, you're your 4th seed. You are supposed to come in and make this look easy. And I don't know if this is going to be a credit maybe against Renegades. I think it's actually more of a credit for Belt Slap
Agreed.
here. Being able to take a team like this and dismantle them after what we just saw in game one, not letting it get to them, recognizing where the mistakes were, knowing that Genetics at this point was like 0-4, 0-5, and right now he's 0-0-4, has the assists online instead. And it showcases again how good, hey, Julio is. That was brilliant.
Okay.
But also Johnny in these rotations is going to be everywhere. You're never in the engagement you think. It's always whatever you see +1
Yep.
whenever that ult is available.
No, you're exactly right. I think we are seeing a great case in these first 2 games for why Apollo is so popular right now. His rotation potential is absolutely nuts. I think Jake and Barra had a chance to maybe turn that around before Johnny showed up. Then there was no option for him to make their way back out. He'll be able to do that every single fight. He's working on a fail knot to come in on the back end of this with Transcendence, plus that fail knot. That's actually a ton of CDR he's going to have. That ult's going to be up all the time.
I mean, he's going to be cruising
Oh, yeah.
in space, going to be able to ride that chariot as long as he wants, especially with that mana from the Transcendence as well.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think we saw it in the wild cards. It might not have been Johnny, but someone playing Apollo Jungle just hovered around a team fight for what felt like 30 seconds straight, and then decided when things went south, he was going to go ahead and get on out of there. But that's the interesting thing about it is he can sit up there and still have enough for plenty of cooldowns afterward. His dash is going to be good. The downside is, compared to your regular jungles, he's gone for the Beads Aegis combo, so he doesn't necessarily have the aggressive relics that you would like to see. But I think because he has the dash and the ult, you don't really need your blink, and otherwise you have exactly what you need. Safety. Something to help keep you alive because you will be a difference maker.
This has been a great performance from Belisab so far, but they have got to find a way to cross the finish line. We're still early in this thing, 16 minutes in. A similar lead on the other side had us singing the praises of Renegades because we know what that team can do at this level of competition. I'm not affording Beltslap that same level of confidence until they can show that to us here. And this is their opportunity to do it. About 3,000 gold up. But really, Gord, look at these numbers. The only place where there's a big disparity in Beltslap's favor is the jungle. It's like 3 levels up. But in the dual lane, Barracuda's still ahead of Arkle. So they really need Johnny to be the spearhead here.
And now that we've got Lasber getting that sludge online, Jake, once he gets a little bit more gold, last time he was rolling in farm. This
Right.
time he's struggling a little bit, just 1 level behind. But once he gets this next item online, more than likely going for the sovereignty again, or just anything that's going to give some physical protection, it's going to make him a little bit more of a mainstay. These last few fights haven't really had a lot to say about Jake outside of, oh, he's dead again. And that's been causing a little bit of issues for him. Once he has that next tanky item online, still have a lot of damage coming from Zeros, but Arkle, Johnny specifically aren't going to be hitting as hard, and that should help him stay in these fights just a little longer and get something done for his team. Whether it's setup and ult, what have you, it'll be something.
Wow, there's no chance that Lasber could fight Johnny right now, is there? He just can't compete until he does some more farming and tries to catch back up. The only good news I feel like we have for him is, I mean, Johnny can't keep getting ahead, right? There's going to be a level 20 at some point, so maybe that can be his last bastion of hope. But things are scary for Lasber, the jungle right now. The rest of the team of Renegades, particularly Barra, are going to have to step up, and we know that he can. But look at this. They're putting Johnny over in the solo lane,
He can
and
rotate in.
Julio's a part of the fight. Is that the call there?
I mean, look, you don't pay attention to him, he gets this tower. You pay attention to him, and there's a fight going on, he ults over. Lasber, I don't know if this is a fight you want, even down.
Oh, but some help from Variety. A great call to potentially get a shutdown here onto Johnny. And they need to give this to Lasber if they can. Variety has to take it, so some of that bonus goes to him. Meanwhile, the rest of Beltstep are starting up the Primal Fury. So is that kill onto Johnny going to be worth? Not if they have to give up the big objective. Jake is disruptive in the back. Big Discorian ultimate from Venenu takes care of Arkle as well. And I think Renegades have done their job. They defend.
But here's this raw healing, that Lotus Crown as well. Just soak it up. Give me the prots as well. Like, make it easy for me. That's what's been so deadly. If you're Variety here, if you're Jake here, if that raw heal is set up, good luck going in. You're not killing anybody with that. The plus prots that you're getting from that is just going to be too difficult for them to be able to find anything. But look at the Renegades. They're the ones starting up the Primal Fury. I think Julio And not only able to sniff it out, Julio's scary enough that I don't want to do anything near him. A Hercules at this point in the game is deadly.
Plus, Renegades have lost their big window, haven't they? Johnny is now back on the map. Killers are in the streets, as my boy Miff likes to say, and it's Johnny is the guy that you got to look out for here on this one. BeltSlap still the enjoyers of a lead, but the lead shrinking maybe a little bit here. That big kill on a Johnny was helpful. Lasper gets the Tier 1 tower now in right to match the Tier 1 in duo. This is what an SPL team does. He may have got ahead of us early, but Renegades are slowly getting back into it as the Primal Fury starts up.
But like you said, where it got picked up, unfortunately onto Variety, didn't help out Lasper as much, so he might not be as effective. He's on the other side of the world right now.
That's right, not even really here to help out in this fight, but Lasper is now on his way, and we know how quickly Johnny can get here with that ultimate if he feels like it's necessary. But the great thing is, if BeltSlap can stall, and they have, he doesn't even have to ult to get over. He'll still have the ultimate later, as he'll try and contest Lasper on this mid-tier 1 and force him to retreat.
That 3-level lead. If Lasper was able to get that kill earlier, just a dash sooner, 1 second cooldown, whatever it was, would have made a huge difference over there for the jungler. But he's still at that point. Now with that sledge, the brawlers, as long as he's active, he should be able to get something done.
Yeah, but Jake is finished here on the left-hand side. He gets caught by these slows, and Arco gets the kill. And I want to make sure I say, Variety takes that kill, right? I mean, you don't wait and risk somehow him getting away. You kill him there. But I think in an ideal world, you give that over to Lasper. So Johnny now on the lookout. This is all that mana you were talking about, and he seems comfortable, still above half, as he goes look around for a good target.
He's got his headphones on. He's got some beats popping. His chariot is
he's a base Apollo here.
Fine. I mean, yeah, being able to come through, feeling pretty solid about it, but I mean, look, you get rid of that ult. Maybe that's a go sign for Renegades, but I don't know what you do. You don't have Jake. You're fighting a 4v5. I don't think you can get this aggressive.
They're going to defend what they can and trade the Pyromancer. 2 members of Renegades are on Pyro. They've already taken it, but now BeltSlap know there's no backup here, so they get the Primal. Not an even trade per se, but I think if you're a bit behind to the 4v5, that's about as good as you can ask for. A chance to steal plus Pyro.
And towards the end of Phase 2, we actually saw teams in the Knights, Ghost even, taking that trade in favor. If you know you can't win outright the Fury fight, just go ahead and focus on that Pyromancer. It's, again, like you said, maybe not as much worthwhile to you, but it is going to be something that you get back. Unfortunately, you have to be able to do something afterward. Good jukes, maybe just a big miss from Julio.
He's got to hit some of that.
And they're in a good position. I mean, 21 minutes. At this rate, anybody could get a Fire Giant. One good fight from Renegades keeps them in this, even though BeltSlap have a pretty solid lead.
Man, if you didn't think Worlds was going to be hype, how about the SCC team hanging with the SPL so far in this set? Renegades, though, grab that mid-tier 1 tower. So a little under 1,000 separates these teams. Gore, you said it perfectly. This is about as even as it gets. Any team can take this next FG. As we move into the 21-minute mark now, actually approaching an even late game this time around. We didn't get that in Game 1. So we'll get to see how BeltSlap look to navigate it. They've got great itemization available, though. The Kens and the Berserkers finished for Arkle. The Soul Reaver, that big percent pen item, finished for Zeros. And Johnny's build is just about rounded out already. They're in a great spot.
And you have to look at it, I mean, awkward map state. 4 towers up for everybody. 1 tower, I mean, almost negligible there for BeltSlap, but it still exists. Therefore, that gold is not in Renegade's pockets yet. So that's something that you have to think about, because whoever gets the Fire Giant, right now I see a clear path to run straight down mid. Both teams being able to run towards left and potentially find it. With that push potentially coming from Lasper, that tier 1 should be going down. But it leaves a big advantage for BeltSlap in the Fire Giant pit, having all 5 members here ready and willing to fight.
Exactly. Lasper's pushing over in left. So it's a 5v4 on the Fire Giant. This is such a big fight here, Gore. Variety blinks forward, looking for Johnny in the back, but he's taking too much damage too quickly. He takes the stun, but now he's got to find a way to retreat. Where is the backup as Variety dies all alone? Arkle claims the head bounty, but Jake gets 1-0 as low as well. Venenu has a big ultimate that helps them turn things around. They get 2. Genetics in trouble as well, and the late game prowess of the SPL wins out, at least here.
That Chariot's going to get you out of here, but how far can you run? Well, we saw his mana bar earlier. It's going to be pretty far at this point, so I don't think Johnny's worried about getting chased down.
What a fight.
But it's all up to Julio. Boulder available. This is not out of the park for Renegades. They have 4 members alive. They shouldn't lose it. There's always that chance.
Yeah, they don't have the greatest confirmed. That is a good point here with Venenu, but maybe if Ven and Vera stack everything up, they should be able to do it. But right here to try and steal it away is Julio. The Boulder's not enough. Renegades get the objective, and now, Gore, they take their first real lead here of the game.
And that is all it takes sometimes. One team fight that close. Again, map state's pretty equal. Yeah. You don't push the advantage when you have it. You get a tier 2 if you're BeltSlap there in mid lane. But is it worth the trade of now having Barracuda with a Fire Giant buff on this Scotty? I think that's a very dangerous trade to make. I mean, better for the Renegades, though, right? You've got 2 Hunters on the other side. You get a Fire Giant buff of your Belt Slap. Any structure that survives is counting its lucky days and minutes before it gets taken down. So Renegades here finally find themselves a little lead, only a couple hundred gold. Fury's going to be coming up in about 1:40. Pyro, pretty much on the same timer, going to be coming up just shortly thereafter. A lot of that will be on the map for them to make sure this lead can extend. They should be able to end with 70k if they play it appropriately. But it's not enough of a lead now that I think Belt Slap have to fall back to Phoenix's. I think they could defend a tier 2 and feasibly find some kills.
Oh, but this would be such a big bounty, wouldn't it, to take care of Awesome Jake right here and now. And Julio is so fast. But he misses! That absolutely hurts. If they could have gotten that pick, but maybe they'll go Variety instead. They force out his beads. The root is there, and Variety suddenly in trouble. Belt Slap or a roving gang of trouble as they look for picks in the jungle, but Variety and Jake make it out.
I mean, between the Aussie pickup there for Johnny and then the chin size pickup for Arkle, I'm surprised Jake and Variety are surviving as long as they are.
Yep.
I mean, 2 Hunters looking at you if you're a tank, that hurts. It's not fun. It is not a comfortable way to play, especially when you are at this point, you get that Relic Dagger. You don't necessarily have all of the protections in the world if you're Jake right now. A lot of health picked up and focused on, but it's working out. He's making it out alive. He still, again, has that ability to heal himself up. And so far, this has lended itself to a much better late game from Renegades. Lasbro down 3, almost 4 levels earlier, is tied with what comes out of Johnny. Maybe not total in net worth, but, I mean, he's making up for it. He's got 2 towers just on his own.
Lasbro's found a way to still be impactful despite falling behind pretty dramatically to Johnny early on. And now Johnny, once the map kind of shrinks a little bit and we're fighting just under these Phoenixes, we aren't spread out, I feel like you do lose a little bit of the value in those globals, but he'll still be able to use it pretty well here in this late game. So this is up to Renegades now. They're in the driver's seat here, Gore. They're deciding where these fights happen, the piece of them where they go. And Belt Slap, all of a sudden, are back on the defensive despite a great early game.
I mean, yeah, just how the tables have tabled. Johnny does so much, so well early on. Zeros is hitting so many good ults, but, I mean, it has to be said, these fights haven't been going well. Another great ult from Zero starts us off.
Yeah, now Barracuda's low. The boulder comes in, but Barra avoids it even on the immobile Scotty. Up to the sky goes Lasbro as Genetics is low. Getting rid of that Scarab's blessing would be big. Why even drop it there with the execute coming? He falls anyway, and Genetics can't compete. Now it's Jake's turn, but Julio has the peel, but you can't stop Variety with the double kill. Barracuda puts down Johnny and Gore. I think this one might just be over. Julio falls as well. It's a triple for the solo laner out of Renegades, and we're moving on to game 3.
I mean, just brilliantly played at the very end there. And as much as I have to give credit, triple kill for Variety, the execute's on point with him, going through that Scarab's blessing. I've got to give a lot of credit over there to Jake, because Jake, at least in both of those last 2 fights, gets to the back line, gets a good Fearless, or forces some beads, makes sure that lockdown is just away from Belt Slap, and they have nothing to answer with for that. That then opens it up as an easy run-through for Variety and the rest of the crew. I think they just played that really well in 2 engagements from behind at the very beginning, and unfortunately for Belt Slap, the double Hunter, as good as it is at shredding pretty much everything, didn't shred through the tanks fast enough.
I think what we really saw there, though, was the difference, right, between playing in the SPL all year and playing in the SEC. Even with all their experience, Renegades hung through in that mid to late game. They got back into the game. Getting that fire was huge, winning that fight over there, and now all of a sudden they're up 2-0. But can Belt Slap find a way to bounce back? We'll find out after the break.
Close, but no cigar for Belt Slap in game number 2. A fantastic early game. The Apollo jungle's popping off. Everything is working for them, Mifflin. And then they make 2 mistakes and instantly lose the game off of it. That's how tough SPL competition can be. Brutal for Belt Slap in game number 2. But before we get into breaking it down a little bit more, I want to remind you that if you're watching at home, which everyone is, make sure you're tweeting at us with the hashtag SWC at home evergreen here showing their setup. Very good ambiance in that picture, I'd say, Mifflin. I'm digging the vibe that Evergreen's got going on there.
Yeah, like a nice little amber energy, for sure. I think he's definitely got the ambiance, the coloring, the lighting, everything's perfect. And you know what? From now on, I guess we can just review everyone's lighting.
Yeah, I'm down with that. Zach looking nice and set up there in order to watch the SWC at home. Thanks for tweeting at us, Zach. Again, on Twitter, use the hashtag SWC at home, just like Realistic KC has here. Miff, you're looking good there. We're still working on the bow tie. That, a little crooked there. We've set it up so it's straight at the beginning of the segment, but I will make no promises for the rest of the segment. And look, everyone who's been watching all year long knows that you like to throw things on their head a little bit. You know, the paintings behind you, which are always totally in order for the record. We're going to try and match that same energy here with the bow tie. But let's get back to game number 2, shall we? The Apollo jungle worked in this game. I don't think that we can place the blame on the Apollo jungle. I really think that Belt Slap just overcommitted to variety on a Fire Giant fight, and that was the rest of the game, basically. They made one mistake.
And that's all it takes when you're competing at the SPL level, right? Renegades is a team that if you make one mistake, well, you just forfeited the game. And it comes to fruition exactly right there. But if we evaluate what Belt Slap brought into game 2, every single individual piece worked much, much better. The rate of improvement and the adaptations that they're bringing are working, and it's giving me confidence in their ability to find a match at some point, and they're going to have to do it here.
Absolutely. I mean, that was a very close game 2. Johnny played very well. Genetics was impactful on the Kepri, though. Thought the ultimates were a little bit lackluster early on, and that's where you need them to be impactful, because otherwise Variety is going to rotate in and make your ultimate pretty much worthless. That a moment where Barracuda gets a kill where Scarab's Blessing's ready. But this is the big fight. They chased Variety into this corridor. Venenu, who had a phenomenal game, by the way, hits a massive ultimate. Jake's in the perfect position to push everybody in. And it's like Renegades drew it up and made it work perfectly. And then, of course, Variety ends the game with the clean triple kill.
A fantastic triple kill. But in that Fire Giant engagement, it felt to me like awesome Jake 408 was screaming at the top of his lungs, I'm not going to lose here. My man from behind, Fearless is into 4 people to create infinite space for the rest of his team. It doesn't get better than that. You can't write that. That's one guy putting on his cape and saying, I want to keep going through worlds.
He did it there, and Variety, the man on your screen right now, ends up setting him up perfectly for it. Just baits all of Belt Slap into a corridor, and the rest of Renegades there to punish. A beautiful game from him, 4-1-5. Really, really impressive. I will say that Lasbra was a bit invisible in the early game in this one, Mifflin, and you're not picking Rat to be invisible in the early game. In fact, he had the third lowest player damage in the whole game, narrowly beating out Zeros on this Raw. It's a win here for Renegades, but that when we're talking about concerns we have for this team, early games like that for Lasbra are definitely near the top for me.
I completely agree. It felt like he was really only getting involved to use the ultimate, hop up into Yggdrasil, drop off the branch, and then immediately use his dart to escape a situation. Go split push, go maybe strip away some back camps. I want to see him more focused on fighting with the rest of his team, because I agree completely. Lasbra had a very quiet performance, not only in Game 2, but also in Game 1. I think that, if anything, if Renegades are able to take away this set, we're going to need to see more from that player in particular, Lasbra, if they want to keep this run going.
Let's see if they can do that here in game number 3 as we head into picks and bans. Belt Slap in that first pick position yet again this time around. We've seen them stick to this spot and feel like that's their best option, because remember, you do get selection if you're coming off a loss, so Belt Slap has done that at least 2 games in a row. As Belt Slap ban away the Ymir, and there it is, Renegades. I was going to say, Apollo seems to be the most common denominator among good early games. Renegades take it away.
Look, Apollo jungle, because I get to talk about it again, I have to. When you build Transcendence on this god, he gets a driver's license to stay in the air for as long as he needs to. I don't care if the team fight lasts 3 entire minutes. If that's how long he has to stay up there to confirm a kill at the end, he's gonna do it. And once Apollo's in the air, it puts so much pressure onto your team. I can't use my jumps, I can't use my dashes, because the second I do, I'm getting dunked by Johnny. So I think Renegades are very smart with this ban.
I think so too, but it does change things up a little bit, and that means that Johnny is likely to get this set once again. Interesting decision here by Beltslap as well to ban away the tier from Jake, and looks like Lazarus going to stick to his guns. Ratatosker top pick 3 games in a row now for the Renegades.
And it's going to be the Cupid as well. I'm surprised that Raw is falling so down through the priority order. We saw him, what, 9th pick last time around, still not getting prioritized pretty highly in the draft. I like what we're seeing across the board. I think Lazra looks the best when he has access to some sort of global or a semi-global, Ratatasker, Thor, something along those lines, so he can rotate in the team fights much earlier on and have impact immediately. I think that Barracuda playing confidently, put him on an aggressive hunter, Cupid fills that bill.
It certainly does. I think that he's going to fit well into this and keeps that early pressure going. Barra has played with a ton of confidence here today, and despite Johnny and Beltslap getting off to good starts, I thought that his Scotty, in particular the double shield build that he went, ended up paying off beautifully there for the Renegades. As Beltslap taking some time to think, and this is what I expect to be a trend all week long. Game 1 picks and bans, usually very fast. By the time you get to Game 3, Game 4, Game 5 scenarios, picks and bans usually slow down quite a bit as teams try and make sure they know exactly what they want. As Sobek comes in here for Beltslap, a god that's been banned a couple times here so far, if memory serves, but first time getting a look at the Croc.
I love this Sobek pick, Aggro. It makes perfect sense because how are Beltslap losing these late game engagements? It's variety and it's Jake running amok in Beltslap's backline. The backline peel that Sobek brings with the pluck, with the tail whip, all of that, even the ultimate slow just to create a little bit more space is going to make it much easier for Johnny and this Jing Wei to find the space they need to flourish.
I agree. I think the Sobek pick can work nicely. Now you've got a wombo combo there with Sobek and Jing Wei where you can keep the CC chain going quite nicely depending on what Jake picks. And it's worth noting here that I feel like Jake has gone for, they've top 3 Jake's pick both games of this set. And if Renegades want to keep that trend going, I mean, Jake's pick would come in right now before the second ban phase, but you're looking at things like Achilles for variety every single game. That has been bottom 2'd. I can't imagine that's going to be able to slip as Scylla is being hovered here by the Renegades. Mifflin's face is full of shock right now, and I don't know that I'm that level of surprised, but it does feel a bit different than Renegade's strategy through the first 2 games of this set, doesn't it? They've been trying to get aggressive early. It didn't work in game number 2, but they won the team fights late despite that. Scylla is not the early game pressure god that we've seen from Renegades in basically all of their drafts.
Scylla struggles to clear waves, Aggro. I mean, you're not clearing the archers until around level 5, level 6, and this is exactly why I was concerned. The bans coming out in the second phase from Renegades, you pick Scylla when Ra's available, the Searing Pain, the healing that it brings, the survivability. I think Ra should win out in spades there. And so far, Persephone going ignored as well. There's a lot of high priority picks that we'd have expected in Worlds, especially considering how playoffs went. And seeing Scylla in the top 3 for the draft, it's crazy. It brings a lot of damage. It's going to have decent follow-up off the Ratatasker as well, a dunk off a Yggdrasil into an immediate Acorn Blast stun. I'm a monster, that's free. But it's still crazy to me. It's a very interesting pick.
Listen, man, Ven picked Opwash when Persephone was open 2 games ago. So we know this man is on a different level right now. As Serket being hovered for Renegades with that Ratatosker locked in, it is possible that we could see Ratatosker solo lane. That's been a variety special in the past, but this Serket also has that potential to flex into support. Serket, a god that started getting momentum towards the back half of Phase 2, usually going for a much tankier build.
Aggro, I've got whiplash, man. This is, I don't know what's going on. My eyes are crossed trying to figure out what the Renegades are bringing to the table here. And you're exactly right. They're all flex picks. That could be Serket support. It could be Serket solo. It could be Serket jungle. Because awesome Jake 408 exists on this roster. It's just another layer of entropy that every coach in the league, I'm sure, would tell you is just this X factor that you don't know what to expect.
Really difficult draft to lock down here so far by the Renegades. And Beltslap going to round out their draft with a Wukong and Discordia on the bottom half. Now, Julio has been a Wukong specialist all year long. That feels like a very good comfort pick for him. And Discordia now being played in both games is somewhat interesting. But Zeros, I felt like, did not have a huge impact on this pick in game number 1.
Yeah, it felt like I mean, game number 1, can you really put the blame at Zeros' feet there? I mean, they got blown out very early on by the 408, the duo lane diff that Renegades was able to bring. So I think that we can't really put the blame on Discordia or Zeros in particular, and I think it's got merit inside of this draft as well. If you want that set to pop off in the early game, Discordia passive is going to help out a lot. If you want the Sun Wukong to be a bully in lane, Discordia passive should help out a lot. So I like this pick as well for the survivability that it brings. That tiny lap, the erratic leap, is going to be nice to deal with the Ratatasker ultimate. With Beej, you can avoid the Cupid ultimate as well. I think Zeros is very comfortable with this pick, and I trust him on it.
Well, it's going to be the Ares selection here for Jake, something that he played at those Phase 2 playoffs where Renegades did look very good. Jake had some highlights on this pick and some lowlights. The usual box that I want to check before we pick Ares is low CC immune ultimates. Do they have a lot of CC immune ultimates? And the bad news for Jake in this moment is that Belt Slap has 4 CC immune ultimates on their side, but they also have a lot of mobility that gets shut down by that cripple. How do you like the Ares pick here for Jake?
If he wins out in the early, I love this Ares pick. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but if I see Jake fall in the early game, Ares has a very low comeback potential. If he gets caught behind, he's a free food for the rest of the match because he's so immobile himself. But if he's able to make it to that 10-minute mark from even, or even from ahead, he can dominate this draft that Beltzap is bringing. Jingwei, you're going to have to use the ultimate every single time you get chains. The set won't be able to engage. Sobek can't find the plucks. I like this Ares pick as long as it works.
Well, oh wow, way to go out on a limb there, Mifflin. Jeez, thanks so much. Be careful out there as you hang on that sort of prediction. But look, you're right to the degree that early game Ares, if he gets ahead, the game feels over. Like if Jake gets a lead like he did in game 1, he will kill everybody by himself. But Sobek pluck into Discordia root into a Jingwei knockup is difficult for Ares to deal with, so that's the concern for him. And with this draft now in focus, I feel like this Ratatosker top 2 makes so much more sense from the Renegades, because if you're going to have a game like Lasbra just had, and then number 1 overall for your team pick that same god, we're all kind of sitting here like, really? Is that the performance that you really want? But if it's been a flex pick this whole time and Variety's been willing to take this into the solo lane, I think the prioritization makes sense.
Yeah, I like it a lot, and it's going to be a wrench in the works for Belt Slap. Where's this Ratatasker going? They can only assume it was going to go into the jungle, but now I think it is likely going to be the Surcat, as you do as well, and it's going to have a very good matchup here, but Surcat is a god that needs to get involved. You don't have that get-out-of-jail-free card inside of the ultimate to get you into these fights if you're late. Lazarus needs to play proactively. He needs to be one of the first people into these engagements, and that's a lot of onus to put on this guy when he wasn't able to do it in game 1 or 2.
How do you feel about Surcat right now in the meta? Because she's gotten a lot of changes. She used to be a mainstay in the SPL. She fell off a little bit. She's starting to pick up popularity in ranked and in competitive again. How do you think she fits into the landscape?
I think it's similar to what we saw back in Season 4, that more bruiser, tanky-centric Surcat who can engage the fights, he rely on the true damage, and just be this disruption factor in the backline. If she pulls anyone's attention, if anyone tries to focus down this Surcat, not only is she likely going to have that bruiser build, but also some of the most mobility possible for an assassin. I think it's just a fantastic annoyance tool, really.
Yeah, difficult to get her off of you the vast majority of the time. And I like her matchup up against Wukong. Wukong normally gets to use a Somersault Cloud, go up there and heal. Nothing we can really do about that. Well, Surcat can do something about that. Last Breath removes all that healing from that ultimate, which can be very, very potent. When I look at the draft here for Belt Slap, it's just a Smite draft. You know, nothing really stands out to me. Their early game isn't inspiring, but they're not rolling over like they did in game 1. They don't have this insane late game that if you let them get there, the game feels over, kind of like they did in game number 2. This is generic Smite, and I feel like Renegades is a difficult team to beat playing generic Smite. We'll see if they can do it, because they need to. Worlds on the line here for Belt Slap. Can Renegades complete the sweep to kick us off here in Season 7?
Tournament, isn't it? Because Belt Slap's hopes would be dashed with one more loss. They will be sent home, and Renegades will continue to move on. Into game number 3 we go. Obviously, Finch and Gore still here. And how could I forget Doug bringing you the views all week long? An absolute trooper as we move right into it. Gore, do you think this draft this time around can make the difference for Belt Slap, though? As I said, maybe a bit of a generic draft, but a solid one nonetheless.
As I said, generic isn't inherently bad, right? Generic just means that it doesn't have anything maybe outright special about it. Nothing that like makes you think this guy's gonna hyper carry, this guy's gotta go big. Last time you're looking at Johnny on that Apollo, and he has to do well on that Apollo. This time, yeah, he should do well on set. Julio should do pretty well. Like, everybody's on something comfortable for their role. And then you look at Renegades, and it's just, how do you deal with, well, this Ares?
My goodness, it's doing exactly what it's meant to right from the beginning of the game. Arkle narrowly evading death there. Does hold on to the relics, which is huge for him, to provide him some additional safety throughout this lane. But I like the start here from Renegades, almost exactly as we thought it's been all day, hasn't it? I mean, it's this duo lane that is the source of the pressure for Renegades time in and time out.
And we were wondering if it was going to be this massive difference between Jake and Genetics. Coming in, having that priority that comes through. Jake has been the difference maker, but
yeah,
maybe not exactly the way I would have thought. It's not necessarily the Genetics. It's just not showing up. It's just Jake is playing out of his mind right now.
Classic Lazarus on the way. Serket with an early gank. I'm level 2 and you're level 1. What can you hope to do? Deathbane to close the gap. Genetics been hit by the chains, and first blood goes to Renegades yet again. Relentless pressure, and they're able to get on the board first.
And they technically get a little bit of experience there stealing that last little minion that comes through. You get that first blood, and I think this is something that you can expect to see over there in the duo lane time and time again, especially once Lazarus is able to find that ult. It's going to be really easy to find a pick. It's going to have to come on the edge of forcing Arkle to ult, though. I don't expect him to be the one at the ire of all of these kills. It's going to be Genetics again, maybe Zeros if they start focusing on the mid lane, but locking them down, that's their easiest bet to free kills.
It is, and Zeros' ultimate does give him the CC immunity, but it's the erratic behavior he is largely reliant on to escape, because otherwise he'll still be locked down by this oppressive Renegade strat so far. So to cover it, the Death Cat it right. I think this is what we expected, right, Gore? The Variety taking the pick here, but Variety in danger, getting soloed. Julio almost gets it. Johnny comes over to provide the support, and Variety gets put down early. We saw him earlier, Gore, survive those ganks. Couldn't pull it off this time.
Honestly, I think that's just, well, he's an assassin. There's a lot of ways that I could probably try to slice that, but at the end of the day, he is not a warrior, therefore easier to kill.
Yes.
And I think Julio has actually kind of been on the precipice of death a little bit too much for someone who should have an advantage in this lane. Aggro had mentioned that this is kind of the Variety special, something that he's run over here, has found success with in the past. But is he going to be able to do it here? Julio is a very, very solid solo laner. We got to see that. A couple of misses from that Hercules, maybe in crucial moments during those fights last game that end up kind of being a wide miss for them. But ultimately, I think this Wukong is going to be a little more devastating. Maybe not as devastating as the Hercules has potential to be, but still someone that can get into the backline. A lot of squishies on the side of Renegades. And so if Julio can continue running this lane this way, then I expect him to get far enough ahead, being able to rotate earlier than Variety and maybe have a bigger impact because of it.
He should be able to. He set himself up well, and now perhaps another kill coming through. Julio has moved out of range, but that sort of backstep
Oh, good blink!
almost gets him out of there. He misses the stun. That might have been enough, but Julio now with another kill, and that is a problem over in solo. Lazarus' number has now been called, and he has to provide the backup. Barracuda in trouble as well. Johnny closing the gap, and Beltslap have now proven that their early game is strong, but they've got to hold on. Last game, the early game was great, but Renegades outdid them in the mid to late.
Just 408 diff sometimes. I mean, literally, you go to that last fight, it's Variety and Jake, and the way that things happened around that Fire Giant pit that really set things up. I think Variety's executes being very, very prominent last game, but Jake's fearlesses and positioning was very prominent. And Ares can do some similar styles of play. Maybe not the same as a Blink Fearless, but being able to go in, get your ult, you either vacate the area or you are now pulled in, and the lockdown's going to be solid. I think Renegades still have that late game potential that you have to be worried about. It's still questionable because, again, not as much tankiness on their side, much more akin to what we saw Beltslap running kind of in that first game. You have one person who can maybe take some of the hits, but let's face it, even with a bruiser build, Variety's not going to be anywhere near as tanky as he's been the last couple of games, and that's going to shake things up for the Renegades. They're going to have to figure out how to play around it.
Yeah, that's going to be the key now. Julio, for the first time all day, is in a dominant position at a solo lane, and you already covered it. Variety's been such a big part of this for Renegades. Can they do it without him? As so far he's struggling. Genetics is in some danger from Jake, but they cannot commit to the kill. Look at that rotation coming. Good retreat there from Renegades because they were in trouble with 4-man in duo. This looks like when we stream on SMITE game as Johnny walks him down. Awesome Jake in some trouble now as Johnny has the damage, but the stun is there. Awesome Jake maybe gonna make it out, but it's Barracuda who ends up in trouble. Johnny now has another skewer, nearly puts down Jake, but already the all-star 3-0-0 for Belt Slap.
I'm going to go ahead and say, though, a little bit of reversal roles. I like Barra's intentions. Get in front of him, block the attacks, make sure Jake gets out safe. But that's usually Jake's job for Barra. I think in that case, though, Barra gives up his life because he knows one will make it out, whereas if Jake dies there, they both go down. It's just one of those sacrificial plays you can make when you've seen a lot of it. And I'm going to say it, 0-2-1, not the best spot to be as a Cupid. But you're level 5 compared to Arkle. You're going to be a little bit behind in terms of gold. You can see he hasn't finished those Devos gauntlets yet. But you're keeping up enough, and that's really the big deal right now because Variety can't say anywhere near as much.
No, things are not working for Variety right now. That is 3 deaths for him in the early game, and finally, Belt Slap showing us some actual real signs of maybe being able to get this done with Variety this far in the hole. This is the thick bark acorn here that he's elected to go with, the one with the procs on it automatically, and he gets some additional procs that he steals with the 2, and perfect pressure again. Laspra has nowhere to go, and Belt Slap looking oppressive with their start this game. Variety ulting in, maybe he catches up to Julio for a dunk. This would be a much needed recovery kill here for him as he's able to make his way back into the game with that kill. That gets him up to level 7.
I mean, that's one of those moments that if you land on, if that's a clone, you feel like a fool, but you're at least able to get something back, right?
Yeah.
You're finally shutting down someone who has been consistently harassing you in your lane, has been beating you. That's going to give some much-needed farm to Variety. It's only a level deficit as of right now, but it's just enough that you're uncomfortable over there, and he's not really going to have a big impact on these team fights until he's able to get either a tower, he can maybe rotate a little bit faster with that ult available to him, but realistically right now, just the Acorn, just the Blessing, I'm not writing too much on Variety yet. He needs his items, he needs his farm. He's going to hang out over here for a while, but he's showcasing that he wants to fight.
Yeah, Variety getting aggressive.
Wow.
Johnny forces out the beads, and now with Laspra here, they get the return kill. Huge work from Variety. Just when I was counting my man out, he makes the big play up against Johnny. Back up from Laspra. And some much-needed kills coming in from Renegades. It happened for him in Game 2, right? The resilience of this Renegades team is what proved to get them the victory.
Being able to just hold on, like you said, the resilience that comes through, it's going to be the biggest portion for them. And it does matter how much it translates. Whether it's the solo laner, I think Variety needing to hold on here because now those couple of kills are setting him up, especially a big kill there onto Johnny. But then allowing Jake to kind of come into fruition as this Ares. It's not been as nearly oppressive as we got to see him in Game 1. It doesn't necessarily have the same turnaround potential, I think, as Tyr does late game as we saw in Game 2, but he can still set up a lot of big plays. Now he's hit that level 7 mark. He has the ult online. Once we start seeing those and beads either being burned because of it and then the follow-up that comes through, or Barra forcing the beads with his ult and then Jake with the follow-through, that's going to set up the 1-2 punch that I think Renegades can control around Gold Fury pits and Fire Giant pits.
They're going to need it, and you're kind of talking about it now, but they've got this great late game they're working towards here. With Veneno on this Scylla, I mean, Ven's been great for him today. He hit the big ultimate that kind of set up that big comeback for them last game, so now he's got I'm a Monster, Crush, a big AoE sick him once he makes it to that point, about level 14 or so. He's going to be a killer for him as well. I mean, they're going to have great opportunities to bounce back into this one. So as you can see, we got a quick pause. Welcome back. Take a good look at the excellent studio that we have for you here now as we try and get back into the game. As I said earlier, everything happened live, so as soon as we can make it through the pause, we will be right back into it. But Gore, Belt Slap have looked great in the early game now, 2 games in a row, but what do they have to do to make sure they can keep that early game lead going into the mid to late?
I mean, this is a draft that, again, it plays generic Smite. It plays itself pretty well. At this point, you're just, what advantage can we get? A couple of kills in the lanes. Ideally, you're maybe going to put some more focus on mid lane. It's been kind of devoid of the conversation so far today. But you didn't get Zeros, even though he had some stellar ults last time, he didn't really do a whole ton there in game number 2 after those. Yeah. So maybe get Zeros ahead, get him into a position where you feel comfortable moving over towards that Fury, get some pressure, and get that lead once again like you had in game 2. Because right now I think Renegade's squishy composition overall, not going to have maybe as heavy rotations. Variety can dunk in, but he's not going to stay in the back line anywhere near as well. He's a Ratatosker, so he's easy to kill off. I think you should use that advantage that you have in terms of tankiness and try to push it as far as you can for Belt Slap as you have it.
You know, the good news for them is Variety has made a bounce back here, hasn't he? Things looked really bad. I hit the panic button on that solo lane 2 minutes ago, but ulting back in, getting that return kill, then another kill onto Johnny with a little bit of help from Lasper, and suddenly Variety is right back in this, and that is what Renegades need for my money. They need Variety and Jake looking good, because that has been the recipe all day long so far. Maybe a little bit of help from Van and Barra, but Variety and Jake has been the recipe that's worked so far.
And I think Variety's on course, especially they've had a couple of kills go against him, a couple of kills go for him. Yep. He's in this weird kind of teeter-totter area where he's just going back up and down. Eventually, I think he's going to solidify in that late-game presence from a Ratatosker. Like you said, gone for the Acorn with the Prots. He's going to be tanky. Right. If you build the right items, you'll get there eventually. That plus a stun that's going to be pretty consistent, an ult that gets you halfway across the map. He is going to be everywhere in those team fights late game. And honestly, maybe even rivaling, if not beating, a Wukong in terms of presence in the backline. It just comes down to what is Jake doing on this Ares. It's kind of the wild card. We've seen it do well in the Pro League when it's been picked up. Yeah. We've seen it kind of go abysmally when it's been picked up. He's very polarizing. But right now, Jake just seems to be on something different. Whatever he's playing, whatever he did to prepare for this, it is working for them. He brings back the tier that we kind of got to laugh about at the beginning of the year, and it looks good now. I think this Ares is in a position to come in, find the chains, burn them down, and still set them up for the same success.
Yeah, I'd wager Belt Slap and I, the only one surprised by 408's performance. The 408's crew out there, they knew Jake had this in him all along, and he's absolutely showing it off today. We just got to see if he can keep that going for him here. This game's still very, very close, right? Maybe 300-400 gold or so separate these two teams, despite the big 3-kill gap that's there in favor of Belt Slap right now. So aside from that, I think Renegades have every opportunity to get back into this.
And I think it's worth noting, like, the differences that we've been seeing. First off, Thebes has been, like, the item for tanks so long, and we haven't gotten to see a single one this set.
Right.
Sledge has been the opt-in for the Warrior pickup that Jake has been. Now he's just going straight to the Sovereignty, similar to what we've seen Genetics do the last couple of games, although Genetics seems to be deviating from his own patterns this time around. It's that tankiness immediately. Jake right now, yeah, you're going to take a couple of hits from the Discordia, but you get aggressive, you might be able to win this fight.
Jake has been plucked and been hit by the tail whip. Lasper getting aggressive as well. Last breath already used. Venenu is coming in inside the I'm a Monster, but they don't need it to get rid of Johnny. Lasper does the work. Gave him a hard time earlier, but he is showing up for them now, as right now they've tied this game back up essentially in terms of the gold. Already dunked back down, has Variety, didn't find much with that. Looks like Belt Slap are fine with backing up after losing it, but awesome Jake isn't, pulls Genetics in, and now looking to see if they can complete the kill.
I mean, they're going to be able to get a lot of damage down, but look at the health bars for Renegades. I don't know if you want to get aggressive in here. With Vin's ult being down, his safety's kind of gone. Sentinel is there, but come on, you're not relying, you're not betting your life as a Scylla on your Sentinel getting you out. You're going to go ahead and hit the pause button, take what you got, and go back with it. Look, they're getting aggressive onto the red buff, and this is the way that you want to play. Don't chase the kills, chase the farm that'll get you further ahead. Still has a lot of damage under her, and I think that's going to be able to come to fruition here.
Well, it's a successful red buff invade, but Jake's going to pay for it with his life. Arkle gets the kill credit as the red buff goes back the other way. Close to determine how that ends up coming out, but probably you want Jake alive.
Yeah, ideally, obviously, if you're Renegades, you want him alive. But at the end of the day, you get a couple of kills in your favor. You lose Jake, so maybe you knock one of those off. But you get that red buff, which is so crucial to, I think, keeping Zeros in a comfortable position right now. Discordia is pretty safe as is, being so far we haven't seen Zeros either be aggressive nor get aggressed on too often. I expect that this is going to maybe put a little bit of a hamper on any mid-lane matchup Belt Slap could have won. Venenu's not necessarily struggling right now either. No. Now that he's finished that Doom Orb, going a little bit later for the pin item, but I think that works better for the Scylla, having that big upfront burst damage. This is really solid for Renegades. Again, if your goal was to just hold on until a late-game position where you can let Variety and Jake kind of run the show for you, and everybody else comes in and clears, this is exactly what you needed to do. It doesn't matter that Johnny was 4-0 at one point. He's 4-2-1 now. He hasn't been able to have the same, presence here in the mid game.
No, he hasn't, but I think you make a good point, right? I mean, Renegades are building towards something good in the late game for sure, particularly around Venenu and how well he'll be able to play, though we can't exact this if Belt Slap don't have a set and a Jingwei that are going to be popping off all themselves. Genetics did plug Jake in just a moment ago. Jake might be in no man's land now that he's slowed. In fact, it's become all but certain that Jake is in trouble. He goes for that ultimate, does manage to pull in at least Arkle.
Good crush.
Good damage from Van over the wall, so Jake is in trouble here, but it looks like they've gotten some good value out of this bad position from Jake so far. Julio eventually gets the kill, but Variety takes care of Arkle. So far, a favorable trade, and if Lasbrook can catch up to Julio, it gets even better. Variety dashes in to help out, but a great blink might have been enough to get Julio out of here.
But Johnny's low. Barra and Vin don't turn fast enough to get him. Julio's still low. They're still chasing over here, and they might be able to pick up two because of him.
He's dying.
Oh, good play.
Hiding inside the minion waves of Variety, stuck under the tower. Great work from Genetics, but Variety's still alive. Gets some procs off the shred that he got there from the spin. In goes Lasbrook, gets the Death Bane off, gets one, but dies to the cudgel on the other side. Barracuda gets the return, and just like that, I believe 3 for 1 overall.
Yeah, I mean, that's insane from Renegades to go back in there. I mean, they're flirting with death the entire time. Lasbrook meets her and goes on the date there, since his time in the black and white. But, I mean, that's incredible, I think, from them to show such resilience. In fact, I'm going to call him out for it because I have to. Venenu misses a Sikkim at one point that could have potentially killed Johnny, misses a big crush that would have killed Julio sooner. But all of those moments, he's zoning out in the mid lane, making sure that Johnny isn't able to be in this engagement. And it's kind of locked down Belt Slap and force him into a position like this. I mean, I'm not used to seeing Zeros, from what we've seen all year, play from behind and play locked under his tower.
Maybe another bit of a small misplay from Ben. I don't know if he had Crush, but I think he expected the Sikkim plus Ares damage to get the kill. But Zero still had the Aegis, timed it out perfectly, and Ben kind of backed off a little too soon. If he didn't have the abilities, though, that's the right thing. Not much else Asilla can do. Just not quite sure if he had him available to him. And Zeros does a good job with a well-timed Aegis to escape. So after that fight, which I believe, all things said and done, is a 2 for 2. Lasper and Jake died. Johnny and Genetics died. So it ends up being maybe a little bit of a wash, but look at this gold. What was in favor of Beltzap for a while has now become exactly even, despite Beltzap still holding a small kill advantage. But if you look down at the actual experience, still a big lead for Johnny over Lasper.
And that's weird, because a second ago, they were pretty even. Johnny hasn't necessarily been successful since then. He's just been able to find a little bit more farm. I think that's Lasbrook looking for the fights with his team instead of going for all of those camps. But it's also something that's interesting. Arkle had a level lead on top of Barracuda. Now he's a little bit behind, and having even a little bit of it shift in favor of Renegades, I think, is a dangerous game to be playing. Lasbrook was down last game 3 levels, and it didn't seem to make a big difference for him. I don't think he's sweating 2 levels right now, especially with the way these fights have been going. And you have all the pressure in the world. I mean, the Fury's still available for you. No one's been able to go over there and claim that as a conquest just yet. Alongside that, you still have the Pyromancer. Technically, 18 minutes is when I start looking towards that Fire Giant, but either of these teams in a good position with a good team fight, they could run the mill and try and find any objective they want. It's just positioning right now. And so far, Belt Slap, they've been the ones punished the most for it this set.
Variety has rotated over towards mid. He lost his tier 1 tower already. So looking to get involved elsewhere on the map instead. Venenu by this point as well should have the full points in Crush and Sikkim.
Yeah.
So that means he'll have plenty of additional benefit there from the Sikkim with that AoE, and the Crush really gonna swing as Renegades start up the Fury. This is so important, Gormizer, that this Fury go one way or the other could create that first real lead here of this game. And right now, Renegades are doing it uncontested. But Beltzap have made their way in. They know that it's low. Genetic steps in for the tail whip, but the response to no escape from Jake. That doesn't get any pulls, but it does get the beads out from Julio in response. Now Genetics is in an awful spot. Venenu crushes him with the Armor Monster in the back. Johnny is low as well. Lasper blinks in, can't find anything with the Cobra's Kiss, but Venenu is swinging. We knew it'd be coming. Maybe wish the crush a little bit, but he's got the follow-up onto Zeros on the back end. Gets it done with the autos, as that's a double kill for the mid laner. Variety gets one himself, and suddenly Belt Slap is starting to collapse.
You know, I'll even run it and say that Crush isn't whiffed. It's set up as a zone. I mean,
Right,
where are you
can't go
going to
that
run
way.
if you're Zeros? Like, good luck getting away from me this time, right? It doesn't necessarily find the damage they wanted. And I'll be honest, it's always surprising to see a Burst Mage use their big secure around an objective in the fight instead of waiting for something like the Gold Fury. But if you're going to get 4 kills, I don't think it really matters where that ult is going at the end of the day. You're able to come through, you get the Gold Fury, you slaughter Belt Slap, and you're able to rip away some of their farm if they decide to go for it. That red buff coming back up, that purple buff available. I don't see Renegades taking their foot off the gas pedal at this point. They are controlling this game, and they look like they're ready to end it.
I like this for Renegades. I know we said this needed to be really, really clean, but maybe weren't giving this Beltslap team enough credit. Renegades have now responded to early leads twice very, very well, which is the thing I would have said they struggled the most with during the regular season. They're actually really good at the early game normally and sometimes let it get away from them. But this is showing some growth for this Renegades roster to me, that they're sticking in these games a little bit better. They can bounce back in the mid to late even when they've been behind. And how good has Venenu been today? Game 2 makes a big play with the Discordia ultimate, and now in this game, absolutely popping off on the Scylla. We knew in the late game it would be good, but I didn't know it'd be that good.
Yeah, I mean, this is something, again, kind of raising eyebrows when it's locked in.
Right.
You're just like, Scylla, you sure, guys? You want to do that one? You want to lock in pretty much anything else here? And, well, it seems to work out so far. He's gone for that Spear of Desolation as well. Look, Scylla, with just the Doom Orb as well as the Divine Ruin, I think is going to be smacking you really hard. Add on the 110 power now that you're getting on top of that. Like, Venenu is just shredding through anybody on Beltslap. And they're going to have to be worried about it. Soon enough, once he gets a percent pin item, Julio and Genetics are going to have to be worried about it.
Yeah, Ben's the biggest guy on the map. That's Pyromancer for Renegades on the backside as well. And it's him, man. He is the killer right now. You got to watch out for him. If this is Among Us and you don't know who it is, he's the guy you got to look out for right now. It's Venenu absolutely swinging. He's got the flat pin online as you covered and is absolutely ready to shred through most of the squishies. It's Genetics and Julio he'll be looking at next with the percent pin on, as you said. A great spot for Renegades here at this point, but they've moved away from the Fire Giant. It's still a little early at 18 minutes, so they want the fight instead of Variety is shredding Arkle, even with 2 other members in his face. He dunks down and is absolutely looking strong to see what else he can do to try and shut things around here at this point. So Barracuda will take care of the Tier 1 tower over in left, and the rest of the team is pushing up. There's Austin Jake with the pull, gets beads from 2 members and forces the reset out from Beltslap, but can they afford to retreat at this point? I don't think so. Zeros gets deleted by Lasbra and Variety in the backline. I'm a Monster doesn't quite get the damage they want onto Johnny. He drops the Aegis to immune it, but now he doesn't have the Relic. He doesn't have the second life, and Venenu has the damage he needs onto Arkle instead.
I mean, just getting the lockdown they need. Venenu's incredibly low, but at this point, it doesn't matter when it comes through. They have been super solid overall. Julio, and there's only so much you can do standing through this onslaught that has been the Renegades. I mean, they've been so clean, even if you lose Lasbra here, and you don't. I mean, this is just great from them. The prots finally coming online, really good overall there for Variety, keeping him alive, allowing him to continue making this difference.
I don't know, can they end from here? I mean, they've got some low members. Venenu's really low HP. There's some members coming up, so no, they are going to have to back up. They will just settle for that left side Phoenix instead. And by settle, I mean they'll happily, gladly take it. Now up about 8,000 gold. What a swing, Gore. As soon as Venenu started getting online, that was when this game changed. They were able to play around it with all this great setup from Variety and Lasbra and Jake. And I don't know where Beltslap are supposed to go now.
I mean, ideally, you win one fight. You can still contest a Fire Giant, not happily, not safely, and definitely not with an advantage, but you can still contest it. I think the biggest issue, and you can spot one, I think, big goose egg there for Renegades, where the problem is Venenu hasn't died yet.
Right.
That, I think, is kind of the issue. I mean, Johnny was 4-0, now he's 4-3. Johnny's not getting to the backline. Johnny's not killing the mid laner, who is doing all of the damage that you need to worry about. Although, I say that, and then I see not only Variety up there, expected for a soul laner, Jake out damaging right now, Venenu. I think that's where the problem is you've got so much coming off of this team. It's hard to prioritize who to take down because someone like Jake is still putting out the same amount of damage as a Scylla.
He has been playing out of his mind today, hasn't he? This is the Jake Renegades are going to need if they're going to make some kind of run during this week. And right now, it looks like they're in form. Maybe not to beat everyone, but certainly to go pretty well here throughout this week. In the backline, though, a little bit of trouble for Zeros, and when I say a little bit, I mean a lot.
A lot.
He is in a bad spot. Lasbra should complete that. They brought Variety back. They do end up losing Venenu, but Lasbra gets one more to shut down. That ends up coming as Genetics finally puts Venenu down, but Barracuda gets rid of Arkle. It's a 3-for-1, and Julio is very low as well. There's the chase coming through as Lasbra completes one more. And Gora, that might be enough for Renegades to put this one down.
So he got Venenu.
Right.
But it just cost them the whole team
Cost them
and
everything.
potentially the game at this point. I mean, I like that they're getting aggressive. Oh, I didn't even realize it with the left Phoenix exposed the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, minions coming down, they can just run this in. Renegades, they've just been running this clean. And the fact that, again, you finally get to the backline where you're supposed to, where you wanted to be, I think it just goes to show that an early game lead doesn't mean anything if you can't do anything with it. That's twice now Beltslap had it. Twice now Beltslap weren't able to convert that into anything late game, and around a Fire Giant pit, one big team fight is what loses them the game.
Exactly right. It's basically the same thing that lost in the game in game 2, isn't it? Right? I mean, they end up falling around that Fire Giant pit area. It's such a difficult thing to manage if you're playing from Europe, if you have not your traditional support in, like Trixtank and said, you have genetics, if maybe your communication isn't where it normally is. So they played excellent, right? Beltslap really recovered from that bad game 1, but it just wasn't enough. Renegades looking real hot.
I think game 1, you stumble into an unfortunate maybe mindset overall, like genetics, not the best first showing that you want, especially in a world tournament when you are coming out, this Aphrodite doesn't work out, and Renegades get elated off of that. I mean, look, you get one win, not only free, but it feels good. You carry that into game 2, even when you're at a deficit. You're like, guys, look what we just did in game 1. We don't have to worry about it too much. And that's exactly what they do. Going into game 3, I'm sure they were just ecstatic knowing that they're moving forward.
Yeah, who does Renegades play next? The winner of Obey Sanguine, right?
Yeah, that's dangerous.
I don't think you feel that great about that if you're Obey or Sanguine. Renegades look good. Quick break, though. We'll be right back with the desk to break it down.
The Renegades continue their dominance in game number 3. 21 minutes, and they eliminate Beltslap here. Commiserations to them on a great season, but ultimately coming up a little bit short here up against the Renegades, who just looked dominant here today. Obviously not the best of situations for Beltslap, not having Trixtank playing from EU, but man, Miff, when the Renegades are looking that good, I don't know how much any of it would have mattered. They looked fantastic here today, and a lot of you watched them in style. Vaporish Coast adding in there. The Penta Kid getting in on the SWC viewing. Of course, he used the hashtag SWC at home. Got one from Ferrer here as well. Hello, Ferrer. Thanks for tuning in and for using that hashtag. You can do so at home at the exact same time. Just tweet us your setup. Show us how you're watching the SWC, and you can be featured on the broadcast just as BMW32490 has. Week off from work. They got the whole week off. That's the way to do it. Love the shirt as well, buddy. Thanks so much for using the hashtag there. Miff, look, like I said, I mean, not great circumstances for Beltslap. We understand that's the way it's got to go at a time like this. But I think we got to focus on how good the Renegades looked here. Again, an early game that got a little rough. Variety maybe not so clean in that solo lane. And when I say maybe, I mean obviously got soloed twice in this game by Julio. But every single team fight was hand over fist going the Renegades' way.
And I want to highlight that Lasber looked a lot better in Game 3 as well. He was able to get involved and help out with Variety over there, who was struggling ever so slightly. But no caster talk, no difference. I want to be completely serious here. It's awesome Jake 408. This guy looks like a man possessed in every single one of these games. There was one point around the gold tree, I think it was about 15 minutes in, where I looked over and said to you, is Jake allowed to stand there? Is he really going to be able to keep 4 people at bay on his own? And he did. And then Ben finds a triple kill. I mean, fantastic play.
Ben played so well in this game, man. He played really well in game number 2 on top of that. I just feel like when Jake and Bear are playing like they are, they're going to get a lot of the credit, and deservedly so. But Ven deserves a lot in this one as well. A double kill for Variety in that fight, a triple kill for Venenu. Just impressive work by him and the rest of the Renegades. And that's what you needed to see from this team in my mind, is that it wasn't going to just be winning through duo. It wasn't going to be just Variety owning in the late game. It was going to have to be a team effort if they want to continue to beat teams like the winner of Obey Sanguine, which we'll see a little bit later on today. If Renegades play like this, they can play with anybody.
Agreed completely, man. I can't stop thinking about Jake. He's literally living in my head rent-free right now because of how hot he's looking. I think the Renegades in particular are a team that we associate with kind of struggling in the mid-game. That's really where they found a lot of their falls in the early season. But here, they lost in the early game twice, pretty handedly, 2, 3, sometimes 4,000 gold down, and immediately regrouped, recentered themselves, and were able to correct the course. That's huge adjustment coming into Worlds, and they've cleaned up the worst part of their game.
Impressive stuff by the Renegades, and it's really telling to me that we didn't call Arkill's name once the entire set. Bera and Jake really were able to stifle that duo lane, which is exactly where they wanted to play through, it felt like, in this one. So they move on and are awaiting the winner of Obey up against Sanguine, which is going to be a phenomenal set. The one thing I'll say is that Lasber looked better, still only 5,000 player damage. Variety team fought really well. You cannot afford to give someone like Yarkor 2 solo kills on you in lane and then expect him to not run the game after that. So certainly still some things to work on for the Renegades.
Yeah, but we gotta, come on, man, give them some credit, bro. They look
Sure.
so good in those team fights. They look so good around the Gold Fury, the Fire Giant. Sure, you can't do it, especially up against other SPL talent. We've seen in, what was it, game 2, 2 mistakes against an SPL team will cost you the game.
Yeah.
But if they clean it up, they keep this team fighting together, Renegades looks like a contender, and I'm not sure that's something I would have said even just 2 days ago.
Certainly a good performance from them to kick off the week here for the Renegades. They move on in the bracket. Let's take a look at where they are placed in said bracket. Belt Slap now out of the tournament again. Sorry for them and their fans, but a great season for them. Obey Alliance and Sanguine, the winner of that moves on to play the Renegades in the quarterfinals. And then, of course, tomorrow we move on to matches 3 and 4. Mind the Gap and Space Station Gaming and E United and the Pittsburgh Knights are the teams that await in their games tomorrow. So that does it for our very first set of the day. We're going to go to a quick break and get set up for the halftime show. So if you want anything to eat or drink, now's the time to do it because you won't want to miss us recapping this first set and getting you prepped for Obey Sanguine. We'll see you on the other side.